Hey guys, Ray Russell welcoming you back once again, partnered with Steve Ekstat for the show here, Monday Warfare, The Battles Within, episode number 11. Steven, can you believe by the time this posts, it's the final episode of January 2021 already?
Just insane, man. Time's flying by when you have fun, I guess.
And for those who may not notice, Steve actually has a new microphone. Welcome into the world of podcasting, Steve. No more headset. He's went the way of Jim Cornette. Even Jim Cornette moved from the headset to the microphone, and Steve's doing the same thing here. You sound great, buddy.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a wise investment, but we're not going to stop here. We're going to continue to get better. Just got to give it time.
Yeah, it's been a wild and crazy last week for me and for you. I mean, one of us had a great week, probably. The other one not so great. Steve, I know you took a little mini vacation with the family. I wish I could twist my wife's arm to do that right now, but she's very COVID savvy. She's tries to keep everybody home as much as she can for right now. Anyway, I think things are starting to turn around, and on my end, unfortunately, I've had a few funerals to attend, but so is life. I am happy to say they're not COVID related. However, they're cancer related, so they're still. I just don't like that letter C right now, I suppose.
Yeah, I can't say I blame you.
But I don't want to bring anybody down here. It's a new year. We have a new president in the office now. We'll see how that goes. It can't go much worse, that's for sure. And we're going to get things going with 2 more weeks of Nitro, 2 more weeks of Raw, all wrapped around both the Clash of the Champions 32 and the 1996 Royal Rumble. We're coming out of that. So we're going to talk all about it here this week. Steve, you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right. We'll kick things off WCW Monday Nitro for January 22nd, 1996 from Las Vegas, Nevada and Caesars Palace. 3,100 fans in the building, $27.50 paying. Not too bad this week for WCW. And it's the go-home show to the Clash of the Champions, which is also in the same arena tomorrow, Tuesday, January 23rd, 1996, Clash of the Champions 32, and a lot of build-up to that show you'll see here today. A couple of news and notes I had to note here before we get going. First was the weekend prior to this Nitro, there was a center stage taping for Saturday night, and would you believe the Iron Sheik came a-looking for a job, Steve, in 1996?
Oh, Lord, we can't get away from that guy, can we?
No, and it's for as bad as he was in 1989 on the Wrestling Memory Grenade in the NWA. We know he winds up in the WWF in 1991. As Colonel Mustafa, and then obviously he still winds up back in the WWF as sort of the manager of the Sultan fairly soon. So he does find himself another job anyway. Vince just has a soft spot in his heart, believe it or not, for certain guys. Jim Neidhart, Marty Jannetty, and apparently the Iron Sheik.
He must hook him up with the good Coke, I guess, huh?
It's just some medicine. You use the code word, Steve. It's not like a Coke. It's not a crack. It's a medicine. I offered Eric Bischoff medicine. He told me, hey, you shiki, get the fuck out. I said, fuck you no good punk, jabroni bitch. And then he no give me job. Fuck him. Fuck you. Yahala.
Thanks for coming, Iron Sheik. Thanks for visiting us here on the Grenade.
Always
the Monday Warfare show. My bad.
Yeah, you get confused. We've never done the Iron. We never had to talk about the Iron Sheik on Monday Warfare. Imagine that.
Talked about it too much on the Grenade.
As we get going, this is an interesting piece, and it seems like, some of the issues that lead up to Johnny B. Bad leaving the WCW, as you've already mentioned before, there were some other stories involved, but apparently there was a dark match where Eric Bischoff had Johnny B. Bad do the job to the Giant in a mere 8 seconds. Now, I'm not saying Johnny B. Bad should have defeated the Giant. I don't even know that based on the Giant's relevance in the company right now, Johnny B. Bad should have even gotten any offense necessarily. Not too much. He probably shouldn't have knocked the Giant down, but 8 seconds, this feels like Eric Bischoff playing with Johnny B. Bad.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't make any sense. I mean, he's in a pretty big feud, even though it's undercard. He's in a pretty big feud with DDP, but it feels like, maybe the writing's already on the wall and that they're just not going to come to terms. And so Bischoff is doing what he can to devalue Johnny B. Bad on the way out. And we talked about it ad nauseum. It's just really unfortunate because it seems like even though the Wild Man gimmick was pretty similar to the Johnny B. Bad gimmick, the same flashy entrance, same flashy gear, same flashy offense, to be honest, it just didn't work for whatever reason. Mark Merrill just doesn't sound as cool as Johnny B. Bad in the music and the Bad Blaster and those sort of things that just heightened him in WCW. It just didn't work in the WWF. And so it's unfortunate that they couldn't come to terms because he was a really, really good talent.
Yeah, and we'll be following that once he does make the jump there at WrestleMania 12. So we'll be following the Mark Merrow career in the WWF, unfortunately. But for right now, he's still Johnny B. Bad as Nitro kicks off with Pepe in a tuxedo and a top hat because Vegas, I suppose. And this week, as Heenan and Bischoff and Mongo are talking Nitro, they're interrupted, and it doesn't ever end now. Now that somebody set the tone for these Nitro interruptions, anybody can do it, including Conan, who makes his return of sorts. I guess you could call it his debut as this version of Conan. It's actually his return. He appeared way back at Starrcade 90 under a mask and did a couple TV tapings right around that show as well. But for all intents and purposes, this is a whole new Conan here. I'm sure most of the fans have no idea what I'm referencing. At least the 95, 96 fans probably didn't remember Conan's very brief stint in the NWA, WCW way back at the turn of 90-91. So Conan's out here. He's the Mexican heavyweight champion from AAA. He interrupts and he says he is the Mexican heavyweight champion. He will wrestle Psychosis tomorrow at Clash of the Champions. So not only is Conan debuting in the ring tomorrow, he's bringing Psychosis with him, someone he knows very well from Mexico. Wise decision there as Bischoff begins to purge the Lucha Libre roster.
Thanks to Conan.
Yeah.
Which is, it's pretty crazy. Like Conan, he doesn't get, and I don't know if it's his own doing or what, but he just doesn't get that recognition that he probably should for how much he played a major role in WCW Nitro being a success. I know people know about it, but they don't sing. That's one of those names you never really hear when it comes to, the big time people that made a big impact in the war. And you don't really hear him very often.
No, it's funny. You listen to so many people that take credit for all the things that they did, and some take credit for things they didn't do. There's always guys arguing over who really created certain storylines or gimmicks, things like that. Conan, no doubt, played a big part in bringing all the luchadors over, all the very high-end luchadors, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, the list goes on. And he really never plays it up. He never sells it. He doesn't go on his podcast every week talking about how he was the one that created the entire Lucha Libre or Cruiserweight division or whatever division you want to call it in WCW. But here he is, and it's begun. And we start with Conan, who has recently come off a very brief stint in ECW. Psychosis the same.
I can't wait. That's what this show's been missing.
And it's already time. It's promo time. Yeah, Macho Man Randy Savage. And before he makes his way out, there's all these chicks all of a sudden making their way. I guess because it's Vegas, man. So you got all these beautiful young ladies headed out down the ramp in front of the Macho Man. Obviously, the biggest name I recognized immediately was Woman. Nancy Sullivan makes her return as well to WCW here. Also in this group of ladies is Linda Hogan. Very easy to spot her nowadays. We didn't know really what she looked like back then. Also, Dave Meltzer reports one of these ladies was actually Linda Hogan's sister as well. And the announcers put this over as Mind Games, as the Macho Man has a bunch of pretty ladies with him, which is something that Ric Flair normally does. So the big point I had out of all this is all these ladies are faceless, nameless, call them what you want, but Eric Bischoff makes sure to point out immediately that Woman is one of these ladies here. So you can kind of tell that she's going to play a factor moving forward.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how Woman is she just kind of blends in here. I mean, I know they're talking her up and everything, but she kind of just blends in and fits in with the rest of them, not really doing anything to make herself stand out or anything. So definitely unique, different, and this wasn't done before. Seeing all these women, I know Flair did it now and then, but it's pretty cool to see Savage and Hogan, or Savage, come out with all these women at first to play those mind games. Because what does Flair love more than the title? It's women. So if you got 6 women circling the ring, he's going to be distracted. So that actually makes sense. I
thought Woman did a great job, as you pointed out. She kind of just was there at this point. She played her cards right, and why not? I mean, she's been around Kevin Sullivan since adulthood. She knows the business inside and out. She's been around the business. She knows what to do. She just came off of a pretty solid stint in ECW as manager of the Sandman, and I guess technically Too Cold Scorpio as well. So woman's been around. She knows what's going on. And now she's made it to WCW after recent reports that she was headed here. Here she is. And not only do we get the Macho Man and all these lovely ladies, but of course, Hulk Hogan has to interrupt because it's the Hulk Hogan show. He says he wishes the Macho Man good luck, but he also wants first crack at the world title because Macho's headed into the ring in his rematch with world champion Ric Flair at this moment. And what a pal Hulk Hogan is, booking matches before Macho Man even has the belt. Eric Bischoff announces that Miss Elizabeth will make her return tomorrow at the Clash of the Champions as well. It's a last-minute announcement. I'm wondering if they just came to these terms in the last few days. Seems like something they would have played up a little more than a 24-hour notice, Miss Elizabeth returning to professional wrestling.
Yeah, if you read The Observer or if you believe the Melts on the situation, they flew her in and they weren't sure if they was going to use her or not. They had to get a look at her first. And according to the Meltzer, being the turd that he is, made comments that she wasn't kind of up to snuff and it took a lot of work to make her presentable on TV, whatever the hell that means. I mean, Miss Elizabeth is going to be Miss Elizabeth no matter how she looks. I mean, she's an attractive lady, whether she gets old and, ages like all of us. She's still going to be very beautiful. I mean, I don't care. It doesn't matter unless she completely let herself go and she's like, just whatever you would find ugly, and then fine. But come on, she's what, 3 years older than what she was last time we seen her.
That's what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, we're only 3.5 years removed from her stint with the Flair Savage feud in the WWF, so it's crazy. I know what you're referring to as far as the Observer goes. It's clear Meltzer's basically just repeating stuff he's heard from someone inside the WCW here when he runs down. I don't know if you want to call it running down, but basically saying that Elizabeth wasn't up to snuff, so to speak, as you said. She didn't look her best, and he pointed out something about the way she looked in her face. You could tell that she aged 3 years, Steve, by the way. I think she would have been in her 30s here, maybe. It's insane. And then he talks about her legs. Now, Meltzer, mind you, hadn't seen her, so he's going off of whoever reported this. So here's my first initial impression of this. Who cares? And then on top of that,
exactly, why
are you reporting this? Even in 1996, why is this relevant? Her look, this guy is ridiculous. So high and mighty on his horse now about things, but he was doing the same thing.
And let's be honest, man, she was absolutely gorgeous at WrestleMania 8 the last time we seen her. I think that was the hottest she was in the WWF, I think. So there's no way she just fell off the map as far as looks go in that 3.5 period. Unless she went into a deep depression over Savage, which it sounds like it was mutual and they were both ready to move on. So there's no reason for that to happen. So again, I'm with you. Why the hell even report on this? Why take the time to run her down when she's making her come back into the business? Like, just be happy or just report that she's coming back and be done with it.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue wasn't even just the reporting. Nothing. No, yeah, I agree. And my biggest part wasn't even necessarily the reporting, which that is the entire thing, but it's that you never even saw her. You're going off some random guy that works behind the scenes in WCW that told you this, and you're repeating it like like this is fact. You don't. I mean, it's crazy. And it's all about how their appearance, just insane. But we'll move on for now because I'm sure that won't be the last time we shit all over to Melts here. As we head to the ring after the Macho promo, where the one where Hogan comes out and says, "Good luck, buddy, but I want first crack at the belt." It's world champion Ric Flair with Jimmy Hart in his corner. What an odd pairing. It's still, I understand there's a loose basis there between the Dungeon of Doom and the Four Horsemen, but there's also issues between the two sides. Very odd that Jimmy Hart keeps accompanying Flair to the ring as he takes on the Macho Man Randy Savage here. Flair immediately tries to rekindle his one-time rendezvous with Woman way back when in the, say, 1990-ish. And he goes over, he looks for a smooch, sticks his lips out, and gets him slapped off by Woman. And the crowd pops huge there. I'm not sure how many people in the crowd knew who Woman was at this point in 96, but they got a big enough pop, I thought.
Yeah. I mean, unless you was watching ECW, you probably kind of maybe forgot about Woman. Because she's disappeared. I don't know when she was last seen in WCW. Was it 90 with Flair? Was that it?
Yes. Yeah. She kind of disappeared out of there.
It's been a while since you've seen her. So I know you got some notes on that going forward, but I also think, I'm with you. They did a pretty good job of selling her history with Flair and just the company in general when they seen her. So that's a plus. They didn't get lazy on that.
Well, I'm going to correct you. You're correct. I mean, but I'm going to add to that. they didn't do a good job going back and covering the history of Woman and Ric Flair. Bobby Heenan, the guy who was working for the other company at the time that the storyline actually happened way back in 1990, he is the one who does a good job because it seems like he did his homework here. And I was really impressed by Bobby instead of phoning it in, as he points out that 6 years ago, Flair and Woman had history in the NWA. And of course, Eric Bischoff hadn't hadn't entered the company yet himself. And he just kind of goes, yeah. And Heenan's trying to like actually tell the story. So Mongo has no idea, which is,
oh yeah. I don't
who'd have thunk that? And then Eric Bischoff really doesn't seem to care or study up on the back history. He knows there was history. He has no idea what's going on. So leave it to Bobby Heenan to go back in time and reference something from a company he wasn't even a part of just to help get it over. So I thought I was really impressed that he took the time to go do that, because that's not really Bobby's cup of tea.
No, it's definitely not. And everybody just remembers Heenan as the comic guy and just being stupid on commentary, saying crazy things and stuff like that. But I've been most impressed by him as far as his work. I forgot how good he did, putting guys like Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, and he doesn't care if they're heel or face. He's just giving credit where credit's due, because nobody else, I think he realizes, and we've mentioned this before, he realizes that these other two have no clue what the hell's going on or how to get anybody over through their commentary. So he's kind of picking up the weight there. So I'm glad he did do this. I can't fault Mongo. He's probably on the gridiron, working out, doing what he has to do to be a pro football player. So I can't really blame him for not knowing the history of the NWA from 6 years ago. But Bischoff, he was with AWA at the time, right? He should know something going on with wrestling, what's kind of going on. But it just goes to show you he's just here for a paycheck, it seems like. How he got the position, he probably could just talk well, I guess.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan's even doing play-by-play at this point by doing these type of things. So it's crazy. Bobby Heenan's even the one that points out that the Road Warriors have reunited for the first time since SummerSlam 92. We'll see them together as part of Clash of the Champions and make it sound like it's going to be a match. And I don't know if that was the original intentions, but we do wind up just seeing a promo from the Roadies at the Clash. But so in the matter of the first 10 minutes of the show, we see Woman return to the company. We hear Miss Elizabeth on her way back to the company, as well as the Road Warriors. Bischoff's really making a play at this point, and it's shots fired again from WCW with all of these names. Vince goes and gets Vader, goes and gets Jake, things like that, and Eric Bischoff right back with Woman and Miss Elizabeth and the Legion of Doom.
He also announced Kevin Green for the Clash, which is pretty huge because it's like the week of the Super Bowl.
It's very smart.
During the Super Bowl, so they definitely he's pulling out all the stops for this Clash of the Champions, and he almost has to. I know we've already reviewed it for our Patreon, but man, what a dumpster fire! So getting all these added attractions is definitely what was needed, because the matches themselves sucked. And
it works ratings wise. It works. So
yeah, it does. So who knows?
World title match starts with a fight on the floor, and then into the ring. Jimmy Hart distracts Rick while Ric Flair pitches Randy Savage over the top rope, so it's not a disqualification. Macho Man comes back but misses a top rope axe handle off the top rope to the floor, landing into the guardrail as we head into commercial. And back from break, it's more back and forth. Ric Flair with the figure four. Flair even grabs the ropes, which Randy Anderson, the referee, catches and grabs Ric Flair by the hair. I always love that spot. Grabbing Flair by the hair, forcing him to release the figure four, and then Flair gets into a shoving match, which Randy Anderson fights right back. Good old little Randy Anderson there. Flair then makes his way to the top rope, but he's a heel, Steve, so what happens? He gets slammed right off, and he hits the deck hard. Wouldn't you know, says Eric Bischoff. Macho Man makes his comeback, 2 flying double axe handles, but Jimmy Hart distracts, letting Ric Flair hold Randy Savage while Arn Anderson comes in with brass knuckles. But the Macho Man ducks, and Arn hits the Nature Boy. And Randy Anderson turns around just in time to see the entire thing. I think he turned around a little too early. Literally, Randy Anderson turns around, and then Arn Anderson nails Ric Flair, and Randy even has to throw his hands up like, I don't know what the fuck to do. And it's Hulk Hogan immediately down to yank Arn Anderson off the apron as Randy Savage goes up top for the flying elbow, and the fucking bell is ringing as Savage comes down with the elbow. Meanwhile, the match isn't over. Macho Man makes the cover, 1, 2, 3, and Randy Savage regains the title in 10 minutes. And I'm sure Hogan probably takes credit for it somehow here in a minute is what I wrote here in my notes. We'll see what happens in a moment. And the fucking bell rang again while he was counting 1, 2, 3. So Whoever's off the timekeeper, whoever's in charge of the bell, they ring the bell as Savage is dropping the elbow. They ring the bell again during the 3 count while they're watching the referee make the 3 count. They really wanted this to be a disqualification badly. And obviously they thought it was a DQ. It wasn't. Randy Savage walks out new, and once again, WCW World Champion.
Yeah, it was a decent little match. Nothing to write home about. In a different time, in a different era, probably been a really good match because they'd be forced to work a little bit more. But since it's Nitro, it's a 1-hour show. And, you got the angle at the end here. It didn't get enough time to marinate for me, but it was a solid match.
So as I was watching the match, and as Hogan yanked Arn Anderson off the apron after Arn Anderson hit Ric Flair with the brass knuckles, I wrote in my notes here, Macho wins title, and Hogan probably takes credit for it somehow. Let's see what happens in the post-match interview. It's Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan in the ring with, call the hotline, Mean Gene Okerlund. Hulk Hogan celebrating more than the Macho Man. To which Savage reminds Hogan who won the match and who's WCW champion. Macho says they're friends, but he's the champion. I'm the champion, brother, right there. Gonna put my name on the belt. Hulk Hogan congratulates Macho Man, but he says Macho won the title with a little help from the Hulk. I don't know what the fuck he's referencing other than yanking Arn Anderson off the apron, but I knew he was gonna do it. And Hulk reminds the Macho Man he wants the first title shot. And Randy Savage here, great line, I'm not Nick Bockwinkel. No, and he says he's not Nick Bockwinkel. He's not the WCW committee. He's just the champion. And shoves that in Hulk Hogan's face. I loved it. And basically what Macho's saying there is he doesn't make the decisions. He doesn't decide who his challengers are. So Hulk may want a title shot, but he's going to have to go talk to Bockwinkel and the crew to get that done. So Macho's very open to wrestling anyone for the belt, but he says if he wrestles Hulk Hogan, he wants the match to be in Caesar's Palace, and I don't know what the storyline was there. They were trying to go for just maybe to get a big pop from the fans that were here in Caesars, but Gene reminds them they have Flair and the Giant tomorrow at the Clash.
Yeah, this was top-notch work by Randy Savage. It almost feels like there's a little shoot going on here, like because he says Hogan was parading around like he just won the belt. He's probably been wanting to say that since 1988, because if everybody's seeing it now when Hogan's parading around like he won the title of WrestleMania 4, never really gave Savage that moment. He's just shoving it in his face just to stick it in his crawl that he's the champion, but kind of doing it indirectly. But yeah, this was pretty funny. Hogan got put in his place by Macho here.
You're walking around like you won the belt. I won the belt.
Pretty much. That's how it went. The comment about Caesar, again, the Melts, he said that there was a possibility that Nitro was going to be taped from Caesar's Palace year round. That was going to be like their home base and do everything there. So I'm wondering if that's why Savage made that hint, because it was maybe possibly in the works at the time. So who knows? That's probably why they did it, because Meltzer was speculating like, well, they're not going to be at Caesars anytime soon. But what's funny is we kind of do get that match, even though the roles are reversed, but it's Halloween Havoc, right? I think they're at Caesars. They run Caesars there for that show, or MGM Grand, one of them. It's in Vegas, so it kind of works out, but we got to wait till October for that.
And we'll move on with the show. It's Dean Malenko taking on Brian Pillman of the Horsemen. And any other year, this would have been a tremendous match. But unfortunately, it appears at this point, Brian Pillman has given up attempting to wrestle in favor of just playing this crazy character tenfold. As even Eric Bischoff puts over on commentary how crazy Brian Pillman is, how close he is to getting fired from WCW, at least in so many words. Brian Pillman crawls around, gets into the camera, his face into the camera, tries to climb over the guardrail into the fans. Absolutely ridiculous here. And Pillman slaps Dean Malenko, and finally we see some action as Malenko takes him down. Brainbuster by Dean Malenko, which Bischoff calls a suplex. Then a neckbreaker, which Bischoff refers to as a reverse chin breaker. So Eric Bischoff doing his best front leg ass kick early and often in this matchup. Brian Pillman busts out the tornado DDT, but he refuses to cover. Dean Malenko comes back with a tiger bomb, and the two men go to the floor, and then it's Pillman to the top rope. Pillman tries another tornado DDT, but he's thrown off. Dean Malenko in the middle of the ring with a giant gut buster. Has Pillman up over his shoulders like we saw a few weeks ago with JL where he did it off the ropes. Dean just stands center ring with Brian Pillman in a fireman's carry position and flings him up over his head down into a gut buster, gets a big pop from the fans. And Dean Malenko with a leg pick and a grapevine looking for a submission. Brian Pillman gets to the ropes and rolls to the apron. Dean gets his foot trapped in between the bottom and middle ropes, and he takes a bump backwards into the ring. Brian Pillman was to shoot through the apron and land on top of Dean immediately so that the referee couldn't see Dean's foot caught in the rope. However, Pillman slips off the apron, falls off the apron, with Dean laying there with his foot visibly caught in the ropes. You can't miss it, as Nick Patrick just stands over him as if he doesn't see it. Pillman quickly shoots back in, covers, and gets the win, but it's so obvious that Nick Patrick saw Dean Malenko's leg was trapped in the rope during this pinfall cover. They tried to save face with Dean, but I wasn't buying the finish. Pillman quickly recovers, gets the win, 6 minutes, 15 seconds. What'd you think of it?
Yeah, the match was messed up because the rope was broke. It was really, really loose. I know during the match, Malenko whipped Pillman into the ropes, and he damn near fell out of the ring because the rope was super loose. I think it was the middle one. It was almost sagging to the point where if you stepped on it, it would have messed up. So it looked really sloppy in parts. I mean, I thought the match, once it got going a little bit, was pretty solid. But again, a lot of the stuff was kind of messed up because of the rope, and it just made it not very good for me.
Well, they loosened the rope specifically for the finish. That's why the rope was loose going into the match. Unfortunately, Pillman slips off, and they blew the finish. Yeah. That's what happens when you're live.
You couldn't even use it.
You have 2 minutes to loosen it, and you don't have time to check it, and this is what you get. And then, they blow the finish anyway, or Pillman does. So the whole thing, not very good by standards of either guy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you couldn't even use the rope, essentially. I think Pillman slipped on one of the tornado DDTs because it was so loose. Unfortunate.
This week on WCW Saturday Night, Johnny B. Bad takes on Ming. The Harlem Heat take on the American Males. Ric Flair goes up against Alex Wright, and Sting and Lex Luger will team up. And it's back to the ring here on Nitro. WCW Tag Team Champions Harlem Heat taking on Sting and Lex Luger, and there's no Sherri, who has apparently abandoned her tag team champions in favor of Long Dong Silver, Colonel Rob Parker. And the babyfaces dominate early as Sting with the Scorpion early on Stevie Ray, but Booker T comes in with the axe kick from behind, while Lex unintentionally distracts referee Nick Patrick. Boy, Nick Patrick's having a bad night early on. Harlem Heat on Sting in what feels like forever. Sting finally, a lot of hope spots, tries to fight his way out of their corner, but a double gourd buster on Sting sees Booker T climb to the top rope for the Harlem Hangover, but he misses. And Sting finally with a hot tag to Lex Luger, but the referee doesn't see it. And Jimmy Hart arrives at ringside. Remember, Jimmy Hart is Luger's manager. However, the deal that Sting and Luger have is that Jimmy Hart can't be at ringside during their matches. So even though Lex is all for it, Sting's not here. And Jimmy Hart hands Luger a roll of silver dollars on the apron. And Sting finally makes the hot tag to Lex. The referee is busy with Sting and Stevie Ray, so Luger takes the time to nail Booker T with the roll of silver dollars, money flying everywhere. And just like last finish, Nick Patrick has to ignore this as well. And we have new tag team champions as Luger knocks out Booker T, gets the win. They get the titles, 9 minutes, 33 seconds. Nick Patrick, what a night for him. And Lex looks amped as they win the titles. Sting looks excited too, but he isn't aware of what's transpired and the way they won the belts. So story continues here with Lex and Sting.
Yeah, it's kind of the transition from, is Sting going to turn or what's the deal? Can you trust him and all that to be in tag teams? So they did a good job of extending this as far as they do. I know I've talked about that a lot, but I really enjoy it. I think Sting's happy at first, then he sees all the silver dollars laying in the ring, and he kind of does a deep breath and is like, really? Come on, man. That type of deal.
Sting saw the silver dollars from the floor, but Nick Patrick didn't see the silver dollars in front of his face. All right.
Yeah. Well, I think Sting saw him in the ring too, but either way, Nick Patrick's having a rough night.
Yeah, he needs his eyes checked. I'm telling you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Sting did well. This was a decent match. It went a little long for me. Got a little sloppy, if you're asking Stevie Ray to carry a match. So other than that, Booker did well. Sting did well. Luger was Luger. For whatever reason, he gets a pop initially, then it just kind of fades away. But yeah, decent match.
And we move on with the United States champion, the one-man gang taking on Hulk Hogan. But this is non-title because apparently Hogan is above the U.S. title, Steve. They don't say that, but that's basically what it is here. Non-title is Hogan doesn't want that title. Fuck that belt.
Well, they say it without saying it. I mean, that's what I put on my notes. Hogan doesn't even want a shot at this title. It makes that U.S. title meaningful, huh?
And the gang attacks Hogan, but Hogan ain't selling. One-man gang dodged a big boot early, goes out to the apron, but gets knocked off the apron and takes a bump to the floor. Eric Bischoff wonders if Ric Flair and Miss Elizabeth have something going on. And I wrote, wow, seriously? Eric Bischoff trying to be Nostradamus here. I wrote, asshole Damus. Bischoff trying to give away future storylines, unless it's not in the plans at this point. I can't say, but if it is, I thought it was real shitty of him to basically plant the seeds already, before Elizabeth even debuted.
It's probably not even in the cards, let's be honest. They have no idea what they're doing day to day, let alone 3 weeks from now.
I wrote here the one-man gang is really trimmed down. Obviously, he's still a big guy, but he's trimmed down from what he once was, and he bumps really good here. And Hulk Hogan doesn't want to even sell for the gang. But the gang manages to take several shots, and once again, another man hits the deck hard on a Hulk Hogan clothesline this time. Finally, gang is allowed to slam Hulk Hogan. First really offensive move of the match that Hogan has to sell. And by sell, I mean lay there, in which sets it up, the big 747. But for some reason, the gang doesn't even go for the cover, but we get a Hulk up anyway. Have you noticed this lately with Hulk Hogan? I don't know if he thinks this gets him even more over. These guys aren't even covering him anymore after they hit him with something. He's just popping up and hulking up without the big old 2 count beforehand. It's really odd, and it's more prominent here as he's taking the big 747, and the gang just decides, not going to go for the cover. And then Hulk Hogan pops up. He hulks up. I wrote, what the fuck? They don't even go into a cover anymore. And that's what I was trying to get to with you here. And of course, it's the Hulk up, the big boot, the body slam, the leg drop, brother. Let's run through them all, dude. 4 minutes. Can you believe it? 4 minutes it only took for Hulk Hogan to beat the mighty one-man gang.
4 minutes, huh? I mean, that just makes one-man gang useless. So whatever you paid him to come in, I guess it's just to lay down for Hogan. I don't understand why he doesn't even allow him to get a pin. At least make it look interesting. But at this point, he doesn't even care. It almost feels like, I mean, he's fighting a lot of guys that he did in WWF back in the 80s. So, we've all seen the big splash from the gang, and he kicks out and does all that garbage. So maybe he thinks nobody wants to see it in 96. I just thought it was funny. Like, every time he does this, the crowd just boos every single time. So it's like the complete opposite of what he was getting in the WWF. And they're over this shit. They're completely done with it. As soon as he starts shaking his head, they're done. He's in panic mode. I guess he's doing whatever he can to make himself even stronger, even though that's what's making him less likable. So
Hogan drops the leg on the gang, and what a great match that would have been way back when gang first came to the WWF in 87. But unfortunately, this is 96, and it's no discredit to gang. He's not being booked in any real threat. It's certainly not to Hulk Hogan. And the Hulkster gets the win there, and that's when some of the dungeon comes running in. We see Zodiac. We see Kevin Sullivan, the Horsemen come in, Arn, Pillman, Benoit. It's about a 6-on-1 here. And Savage joins the fight. He and Hogan fend off everyone who's trying to get in the ring. Zodiac and others start holding back the Giant, who makes his way down. They ask him to wait for the clash. Kevin Sullivan tells the Giant to wait for tomorrow night when they get Savage and Hogan in a tag match, Flair and the Giant do. Everyone holding the Giant back except Brian Pillman, who's doing the crazy shtick as he eggs the Giant on to get in the ring and do some damage, continuously pissing off Kevin Sullivan here. And Bobby Heenan points out there's something up with the Zodiac because he's always the one holding the Giant back from attacking Hulk Hogan. So the seeds continue to grow for the booty man, dude.
Heenan's doing a great job with the feuds and the things like that. I mean, he's not letting anything slip through the cracks. I can't say the same for the other two, but he's doing an excellent job. He's the only person to really listen to when it comes to commentary. He still gets his gimmick over as far as what he normally talks about, but he also takes the time to get a lot of these young talent over, gets the storylines over, plants the seeds, he gives history. I mean, he's on top of his game. This is arguably the best Heenan is or has been as far as being an actual, somebody who's actually telling the stories and things like that. Whereas when he was working with Gorilla and those guys, it was very fun and entertaining in a different way. But just imagine if Heenan wasn't there for guys like Eddie and Benoit, who like Mongo and Bischoff want to talk about Hogan all the time, and Heenan's actually putting over Eddie Guerrero. So if you're just half paying attention to the matches and you're just listening to the commentary, Heenan's doing what you need him to do to get these guys over. And It's a true credit to how much he knew, or he always played it off like he didn't know he knew what was going on, but he didn't really show that. Here he's doing it, and it's great. I love Bobby Heenan right now.
Yeah, it's almost like he's actually doing the gimmick that he claimed to be doing in the WWF, where he said he was a broadcast analyst, and what was the term he always used when Gorilla
would ask? Broadcast journalist?
Yeah, broadcast journalist, that's it. It's funny that he actually is a broadcast journalist here. He's being forced to. Well, he's not being forced to, but if he's not doing that, the product is much, much shittier, at least from my standpoint, as I'm sitting there trying to comprehend what the hell's going on.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. He's a lifesaver out there for us. He's that little buoy, just holding it down for us.
Yeah. And it's Mean Gene in the ring with Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, because you gotta have 2 Hulk Hogan promos per show at the very least, dude. That's got to be the rule at this point. Now let's be honest here. Now Randy Savage out here for 2 promos, he's pretty lucky, because there's no way Randy Savage is, even though he's a hell of a promo, there's no way Randy is getting 2 promos in a single hour, brother, unless he's in the ring with Hulk Hogan. It's a third one?
It's our third one. They start off when he comes out with all the women, right?
Yes, right. And then after the match. Right, here we go. You're right.
And then after the match, and then, yeah.
Well, let's be honest. Lord. The only reason Randy Savage has so many promos on the show is because he's tied in with Hulk Hogan.
Well, yeah.
And that's not a knock on the Macho Man at all. It's just, that's just the reality of it.
That's WCW 1996 as far as Nitro is concerned.
So Savage still selling the match with Hogan at Caesars. He says when they wrestle, he wants to wrestle him at Caesars. So that kind of goes along with what you were talking about, where Meltzer's kind of selling the point that WCW might make Caesars Palace their home base for Nitro. Doesn't happen, and we never really hear this again, Savage selling the Caesars match. Hogan says the one-man gang was the first step. I wrote, really? He's just starting now? Because he's been beating the shit out of everyone for weeks, maybe months. Maybe he doesn't want to play up that he beat Ming. Maybe he's afraid of Ming. I don't know. But if this is his first step, I don't know what the hell's been going on for the last couple months when he's been no-selling everyone and beating the shit out of Hugh Morris and all these other guys. But the gang is the first step. So maybe early CTE here from the Hulkster. And he notes the secret weapons. And as secret as they are, they've already been announced much earlier on the show. Hogan reminds us once again, it's Kevin Green from the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into the Super Bowl later this week. And Miss Elizabeth returns tomorrow at the Clash. I think it's odd that they're referring to them as secret weapons as they announce who they are.
Makes sense, huh? You got to pop the rating somehow.
And
now, would you tune in? So if you just heard we got 2 secret weapons coming tomorrow, you got to tune in to find out. Are you still going to be intrigued enough? Or if you hear the word
No, I think Miss Elizabeth is your selling point. Yeah, I think Miss Elizabeth is your selling point. Let's be honest. I knew a lot of wrestling fans. I've literally seen wrestling fans not know who very famous football, basketball athletes are when they're walking right. And I literally stood in a line one time for a Monday Night Raw as Steph Curry, the entire Warriors walked past us. I mean, literally 2 feet from us, walking down the aisle there to get into the building. And Steph Curry just for some reason stopped right in front of me for whatever reason. He's 2 feet from me and he stops and he looks around and he keeps going. And I hear, it seems like nobody else in the entire line besides myself and my kids know who these guys are. It blew my fucking mind. And because so many of them were very tall men, obviously they're NBA players, I heard a few people go, oh, they must be basketball players because they're so tall. I go, are you fucking shitting me? And this is during the Warriors Cavs shit. You know what I mean? So that rivalry there. So they're at the height. They're already peaked. People should know who Steph Curry is. It's crazy to I witnessed that, So and and that wasn't the first time, but that's like my most prominent time that I really noticed it. I mean, I've seen other football players and things appear on shows, and I hear the fans around me go, "Who's that? Who's that?" And it's not somebody you shouldn't know. I mean, even loosely know if you even somewhat follow, certain sports. So it's Kevin Green isn't really selling the rating, I don't think, by popping tomorrow, but I think Miss Elizabeth is out of curiosity. Yeah. I myself, and I really can't remember this Clash very well to say that, oh, I only tuned in to see Elizabeth. I don't know that. I don't even know if I knew that she was going to be there until she showed up. But I could see myself on Monday hearing that and going, oh, I got to fucking see Miss Elizabeth tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. I just didn't know if you would be more inclined to tune in if you knew who they were, or if they just said we got secret weapons and didn't tell you who they were?
Well, I think, I'm not against them announcing that Miss Elizabeth's there tomorrow. I'm just against them calling them secret weapons. Really, it's all I was really getting at there.
Well, yeah. Yeah, no, I get you. I was just curious on your philosophy as far as maybe booking. Like, would you tell everybody who they are, or would you just say, hey, we got 2 surprises. They're huge. You need to tune in.
I think I would have announced what I would have done. I would have announced Miss Elizabeth and said, and there's another secret weapon. So that, holy shit, Elizabeth's only one of them? Who's the other one? And then Kevin Green, he's not going to pop a rating. Maybe on a pay-per-view, but not appearing in a corner maybe I'm wrong because they were headed to the Super Bowl. It's not going to help that much, I don't think, though. So I'm thinking if it was me, I'd say Miss Elizabeth. And who could the other one be? If it's Miss Elizabeth's one of them, and then it ends up being Kevin Green. And some people are happy about it, and some people, wrestling fans, are probably going, who? Because that's just the reality of a lot of wrestling fans. They're not sports fans per se. No, I'm a huge sports fan.
Me too. I figured there's a lot of crossover appeal there. I guess not. Not to the casual fan anyway. Wow.
But no, that's what I would have done. I would have sold Miss Elizabeth hard, and I would have said, and there's another big special secret weapon too, and he, maybe even dropped it. It's a he. Who is it? Because then you might think it's a wrestler. Who's it? And there's nothing wrong with it being Kevin Green. He did a good job.
No.
Bobby Heenan, I wrote here at the end of the show, I can't give him enough props for this show. I knew that he's been doing a great job with the cruiserweights and the youngsters and things like that, getting them over, but he shills the shit out of Clash of the Champions tomorrow. And I don't mean in an irritating way. He just makes it sound like it's such a huge deal. Great stuff. Bobby Heenan actually cares right now. Remember over on the Wrestling Grenade, 1989 NWA, we did Steiner Watch 89 to figure out when Rick Steiner kind of lost that push, even though he necessarily didn't. He just kind of went over into the tag team scene. We should do Heenan Watch here on Monday Warfare and see when it really becomes obvious that Bobby Heenan just doesn't give a shit anymore, because he finally realizes, hey, if you guys don't give a shit, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I say we do it. I don't recall this lasting too long, but I'm here for it as long as it does.
I think Bobby really was into the whole NWO thing early because it was something to sell, a big angle. He realized it was something huge, but I am curious to see when it's just like whatever, because I know it comes eventually.
Yeah, I think the big thing that Heenan did take from WWF was the ability to sell a big show. Bischoff doesn't really do it. He just sounds like a whiny bitch, to be honest with you. And I'm not buying what he's trying to sell. It just seems like propaganda, especially with the way he works things as far as trashing the WWF all the time, giving away results, those little pot shots. You could tell he's in a position of power just by the way he handles himself on commentary.
Right.
So it almost feels like the owner is telling you to buy my product. Whereas Bobby's doing it in a way that it's wrestling. Hey, man, you got to tune into this show. You never know what's going to happen. We got Kevin Green. We got Miss Elizabeth. Who else? Who knows who else is here? You got to tune in. Like, it's just shilling the show the way you want. Like, it's just you're selling it. And so it's a different dynamic. And as long as Heenan's there doing that, you're fine. But as soon as that disappears and he kind of just packs it in, which can't say I blame him at all.
Yeah. Well, Bobby was already told quite a while ago by Bischoff that he's not doing the WWF shtick here. That's not what he was hired to do. That's not what he wants from him. So Bobby's already abandoned, to a degree, the Bobby Heenan we knew from the WWF. The jokes aren't as plentiful, and the character's not the same. He's more of a straight-faced guy a lot more than often than not at this point. And Eric Bischoff, you're right. He does come off as the spoiled rich kid who has no repercussions. And his daddy here, for all intents and purposes, is Ted Turner, Mr. Moneybags. And Eric Bischoff is walking high and mighty right now. You can tell by the way he carries himself on TV. There is no repercussions for him, and he's not worried about it. And talk about the battles within the war. Vince, like I said, he goes against Vader. Jake the Snake Roberts is back. Bischoff over here. He says, okay, well, we got Woman. We got Miss Elizabeth. Hawk and Animal are coming tomorrow. Big deal here. And segment of the night, Steve, is it Savage versus Flair? I know that's one of your favorite feuds of all time. Not necessarily the WCW version, but in general. Hulk Hogan versus the Gang, the big 4-minute squash, basically. Sting and Luger winning the belts. What's your segment of the night?
I'm going to go with Savage and Flair. You're absolutely right. I think for whatever reason, these two just had perfect chemistry. It's not like a Steamboat Flair classic or things like that, in that vein. It's just, for whatever reason, And I don't know if it's because Savage had the girl and Flair wanted the girl, if that's what did it for me, like hooked me when I was a kid, and I never really lost it. But these guys, for whatever reason, like I said, they just have perfect chemistry in the ring. They're the perfect antagonists to each other. And I love watching them work whenever I can. And also my other favorite part is Savage putting Hogan in his place, parading around like he won the damn belt when it's Savage who won. I honestly feel like there's some truths to be said there. And I think he did feel that. Like, hey, man, you need to get the hell out of my limelight. I'm the champion right now. Move over. Because he never had that, obviously. The only problem is just Hogan just doing what he's doing is in overdrive right now, and it's garbage. March can't get here soon enough.
Yeah, then we'll be without the Hulkster. Once Hulk Hogan basically obliterates the entire heel roster at WCW on the way out, they always say leave things better than when you got here, right? And Hulk Hogan doesn't follow that in any way, shape, or form by the time we get to Uncensored. But that's still a few weeks off, so we'll stick here in January of 96 for now. And as we head over to Raw for the January 22nd edition, live edition of Monday Night Raw, before that, the night before, was the WWF 1996 Royal Rumble, available now as a watch-along, as a special edition of the Wrestling Memory Grenade, our other show, our sister show, which you can listen to anywhere you listen to your podcast streaming apps. And I'm talking Spotify, I'm talking Google Pod, Apple Podcast, Podcast Addict, anywhere in between. And of course, WrestleCopia.com. It's episode number 20, the 20th edition of the Wrestling Memory Grenade, and free for your listening pleasure, I should add. The watch along on the WWE Network, or just sit back and let us entertain you, listen to the show. We had a lot of fun doing the Royal Rumble 96, and just going to run down very quick results here as we kick things off with a 30-minute free-for-all show with a match on it featuring Triple H taking on Duke the Dumpster Droese, where the winner would receive the number 30 and the loser would receive the number 1. And we see Duke the Dumpster get the win over Triple H via reverse decision disqualification after President Gorilla Monsoon comes to ringside and exposes Triple H as having used a foreign object to initially get the win. So Droese gets the number 30, Triple H gets the number 1. That match went 6 minutes, 25 seconds. And we move on to the pay-per-view where Ahmed Johnson gets the DQ win, 2 DQs in a row, over Jeff Jarrett when Jarrett comes off the top rope intentionally with a guitar shot right in front of the referee, very blatant. Jeff Jarrett gets disqualified. Ahmed gets the win, 6 minutes, 40 seconds. The World Tag Team Champion Smoking Guns over the Body Donnas in 11 minutes, 14 seconds. And I put a note here, Sonny is becoming more of a sex symbol character now, and not so much just the Body Donnas manager. And the Donnas do the job only a couple weeks after debuting as a team on TV, basically because they were taking the place of Sid and the 1-2-3 Kid, who may or may not have, were scheduled to win the titles here. That part I'm not sure about, but Sid's out with an injury. The Kid's kind of in the doghouse anyway. So the Guns over the Body Donnas. We move on. Goldust wins the Intercontinental title over Razor Ramon in 14 minutes, 17 seconds after interference from said 1-2-3 Kid. And then it's Shawn Michaels over Diesel, the last man eliminated in the Royal Rumble match. Match went 58 minutes, 49 seconds, saw the debut of Vader, saw the return of Jake the Snake Roberts, and Shawn Michaels wins and goes on to WrestleMania 12 to challenge for the World Heavyweight title. And then last but not least, The Undertaker defeats World Heavyweight Champion Bret Hart by disqualification. Match went 28 minutes and 31 seconds when The Undertaker landed a tombstone on Bret Hart and made the cover, but Diesel showed back up at ringside and yanked the referee out of the ring during the count, and somehow that caused Bret Hart to be disqualified. I still scratching my head about that. Of course, I should have mentioned Diesel and Undertaker had a cross paths in between the Rumble match and the World Title match. Diesel wasn't happy. He'd lost the Rumble and tried to take it out on Taker. Didn't really go over so well. Screws the Taker out of the World Title here, and so we got that feud going on. Lots of DQs in the Rumble. The free-for-all. They opened the show with the Ahmed DQ. They closed the show with the Taker match with the DQ. So I don't know that I was happy with a lot of the booking there, but we're going to move on to the following night, WWF Monday Night Raw. For January 22nd, 1996, we're live in Stockton, California at the Civic Auditorium before a sellout of 2,904. Wow, how detailed. 2,904 fans here. It's the post-Rumble show and the road to WrestleMania. Steve, what do you think? We're in the viewer discretion advised era now as Sunny's playing pool and lingerie to kick off the show.
She's looking good. That's all I'm going to say.
Once upon a time.
Those people, man. Yeah, once upon a time. Back then, I didn't care. I didn't know anything. I didn't know any different, and she was smoking hot. Now that I know how she is and all that goodness, it's kind of hard to look at her the same and still find her attractive. Knowing the brain inside the head, it's not clicking on all cylinders. Yeah, she's still gorgeous though here anyway.
Shout out to Sunny, who's rocking in a jail cell somewhere since last July because she was in there for a year. She got out, did her little OnlyFans gimmick, trying to show off, make a few bucks, showing some goodies, I guess, if you want to call them that. I think the milk's gone bad, to quote a line from the Chappelle Show. The milk's gone bad, Charlie Murphy. But here we are, and it's Sunny's looking good here in 1996, playing pool there. And we get highlights from the Royal Rumble to kick off the show, keep everyone up to speed on what's going on. And Vince dubs this the first day on the road to WrestleMania. And I'm not really sure when Vince coined that phrase, but I was a little bit surprised to hear that sentence here in 1996.
It's a great sentence. I mean, it really gets your blood pumping. And it also, you get that special feeling in the air, something's going to be good on Raw. It should be every week between now and Mania, including the In Your House in between. It's just something special about that road to WrestleMania. And in 96, it was no different.
We kicked this show off hot, Steve. And I don't just mean Sunny. I
yeah.
mean, it's Vader. The man who debuted last night at the Royal Rumble made quite a showing for himself before being eliminated by, of course, Shawn Michaels. Vader here to take on Savio Vega. I thought, didn't Savio get enough at the Rumble? He really got worked over pretty stiff by Vader throughout that Rumble. I feel like Savio was the sacrificial lamb for Vader in the Rumble match, and here he is again here today on Raw. Savio being a trooper, though, and Vader beats down Savio in the corner with some really stiff shots. Huge pops as Vader plays with the crowd, and why not? He's got that 1989, 1990 Sid syndrome where the crowd just can't help but love it because he's literally beating people up for real.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't ask for a better opponent for Vader than Savio.
Yeah.
That was the first note I put down. I was like, I like that they gave him Vader Savio right away. He's going to make him look like $1 million. And he's still somewhat over, He's been treading water since he's debuted, but he's believable and people like him. So perfect opponent for Vader here.
Savio does finally make a comeback, a very brief comeback, as he knocks Vader out to the floor, but Vader lands on his feet and back inside. It's a death avalanche, I wrote in the corner, because Savio, I don't know if there was mistiming. It didn't look bad, don't get me wrong, but Savio almost kind of started to walk out of the corner as Vader smashed him with that. You know how Vader usually runs guys over? You talk about when he claps his hands and he runs guys over and mauls them.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of did that in the corner with the avalanche here, and it looked nasty. And poor Savio eats the Vader bomb. Vader beats Savio Vega, an upper mid-carder, in my opinion, in a matter of 3 minutes. But he's not done here. He continues his assault on Savio post-match, lands another Vader bomb. Referee Jimmy Corderas down. He gets all over Vader, threatens him. And then Vader grabs Jimmy Corderas and beats nails him. Nasty shot. Vader's really not being nice to these poor referees who really haven't done. They're just doing their job, doing their gimmick that they're supposed to be doing here. Cornette gets involved. He pleads with Vader. Vader don't do this. Vader even threatens Jim Cornette. And Jim Cornette, for once, is the voice of reason, which is just crazy to think about. That's how big they're pushing Vader, is just a loose cannon, no pun intended, with the Brian Pillman thing here. Completely different kind of loose cannon here.
Yeah. A big monster that's out of control is a little different than what Pillman's doing.
After having seen what happened to Jimmy Corderas, Jack Doan, poor guy, gets in the ring, and he too comes up to Vader and tells Vader, you can't do this here in the WWF. Vader doesn't give a shit. Stiffs the living hell out of poor Jack Doan. That was plenty enough. I didn't realize he was going to powerbomb him, but he does. Powerbomb poor Jack Doan into oblivion in the corner, no less, after a nasty, legit stiff round prior to that. So Jack Doan took not one, but two for the team, and this finally brings down President Gorilla Monsoon. And boy, Steve, I had been a fan of Gorilla Monsoon since day one. The very first day I turned on WWF TV, the very first time I saw Gorilla Monsoon, I heard Gorilla Monsoon. He is my soothing voice. I can turn it on at night and go to sleep to prime time or anything like that. Gorilla Monsoon was a guy who had retired before I ever got to watch wrestling, basically, especially certainly the WWF. And only slivers of wrestling I ever got to see from Gorilla growing up were from those Coliseum videos, very few and far between. And to see him for the first time, to my knowledge, even when the Brooklyn Brawler took him out with the chair, Gorilla never really looked for revenge, never did anything back. And that was Brooklyn Brawler, by the way. To see him get in the face of Vader here, I immediately became so excited, but worried at the same time. Yes. And Gorilla has had enough. He goes over to the ring announcer. He asks him to, I think it's the Fink. I'm not sure. I didn't mark that down, but Gorilla basically goes over to the ring announcer. He announces that Vader has been suspended indefinitely, only 24 hours into his WWF run. I will say, when I heard that live the very first time, I had no idea what the hell was going on. It made no sense to me. That was definitely a new spin and an angle I had never seen before. Debut a guy and suspend him at the same time. Corny pleads with Vader. Let Jim Cornette handle this. So he's begging Vader, let me handle this. Let me handle Monsoon. Vader don't want to be a part of that. Vader is pissed. Gorilla Monsoon goes over to check on Jack Doan. Vader comes over and spins Monsoon around, shoves the Gorilla. And I can't tell you, the last time I marked out this big for something, way back then, Gorilla Monsoon in real time, 1996, live on my TV, the only time I got to see this, unloads on Vader with 3 big gorilla chops. Things that we had been told from Coliseum videos, that was his signature, other than the big splash. Those gorilla chops. Holy fuck, I'm watching this, and I'm marking out as I'm watching this. Gorilla makes the mistake, though, of after he chops Vader back to the corner, Gorilla turns around, being the Gorilla, to go back and check on Jack Doan once more, but Vader comes from behind with an avalanche. And I wrote, you bitch, as he avalanches Gorilla from behind in the corner, drops a big elbow, and then the Vader bomb on WWF President Gorilla Monsoon. Oh man, I was so torn here because it was great that they had debuted Vader. I was all on board for this big giant Vader push, marking out as he was killing these referees and Savio. And then he goes and splashes and beats down and basically obliterates my childhood, I don't want to say hero, but my childhood commentator, Gorilla Monsoon. It really killed it for me a little bit, but I was just, holy shit. And Gorilla winds up getting stretchered out after Shawn and Razor run Vader off. And I remember this angle because how do you forget this angle, Steve? You don't. If you saw it before, you don't forget this, especially if you lived it when it happened. But in my mind, I didn't think it would hold up well. So even though I knew what was coming, I already knew it was coming, so I didn't think I was really going to get emotionally involved in it again here in 2021. Like, I wouldn't have the same excitement, but oh my God, fucking Gorilla throwing down. I went ape shit. No pun intended.
Yeah, man, this was awesome. Top to bottom, the match was great with Savio. It was only 3 minutes, but man, he was laying him in, like we mentioned at Royal Rumble. He wasn't holding any punches just yet. He was still Vader that everybody loves him from, New Japan, WCW, those type of places, man. He's just beating the shit out of Savio. And then the Gorilla angle, man, I'm with you. Like, Gorilla, he was the first guy I heard, WrestleMania 7. So he was doing commentary. I've watched that tape hundreds of times when I was a kid because that's really the only one I had for a while. I watched it all the time. So it's weird with Gorilla. It almost feels like I loved it as a kid, but I love Gorilla Monsoon. So you never seen him interact with the wrestler. Like when I was a kid, I never seen the Brooklyn Brawler angle. I didn't know that, and you obviously can't go back and watch it unless you was a tape trader, that sort of thing. So I didn't see that till I was way older, and that's really the only action that you see where Gorilla gets beat up of any kind. And so this was the first time I've ever seen Gorilla Monsoon take any punishment from anybody. So as a kid, and like I said, I love Gorilla just like you do. So it's weird to explain this the connection that a lot of people have with Gorilla Monsoon. It feels like the voice of your childhood. He feels like the dad, like of WWF. He's the in between. He's like, okay, so you're here, and then he's there in the company, but he makes you feel welcome and at home, and it almost feels like a family atmosphere when you're listening to him talk. I don't know. It's really weird. It's a really weird dynamic. It's hard to explain. So when you see him get beat up, man, you're just like, holy, it's Gorilla Monsoon. He just got the shit beat out of him. You don't expect it. So it had a major impact. I think it did what it was intended to do, and that was to get Vader over as this unstoppable force, uncontrollable force. And the fact that he got suspended 24 hours into his reign just really emphasized the fact of this guy needs to be taken serious. This was a grand slam home run. This wasn't even just a home run. This was a grand slam. This was a tremendous angle. Seeing Gorilla get stretched out, like he felt like at this point he's the grandpa. He's kind of older, so you're like, man, is he really hurt? Like, how bad is it? I mean, he can't take that much damage. Just amazing. This was tremendous, and I loved it. Even though I'm with you, I didn't like seeing Gorilla get hurt like that, but the fact that it was Gorilla and then it was never done before and it's never been done, it'll never be done after this. It's a memorable moment that I'll never forget from Monday Night Raw.
I think it was important. I think it was important that he did it to someone like Gorilla because, like I said, up until he did that to Gorilla, I was loving Vader. This is awesome. This is great. Yeah. They don't want that. Like, Vader is your heel. They don't want the fans to be behind Vader. He's going to be their top heel. At least that was the plan here as he makes his debut.
Yeah.
They need you to hate him. And what better way to hate him than your childhood, your voice of your childhood in wrestling, Gorilla Monsoon, which we'd always been taught the announcers were untouchable, other than maybe Sean Mooney being thrown out of the screen by the Warrior or somebody getting their suit a little roughed up, depending on who they were. Gorilla had never been touched by anyone outside of that brawler gimmick. So, yeah. I mean, just to see this, it was unexpected and it was huge. And then we go to commercial and we come back and Vader's backstage yelling at his own manager, Jim Cornette, grabs Jim Cornette by his dress shirt, slinging him around a little bit. And Vader says, I'm declaring war on the entire WWF. And then he references the announcers, Mr. McMahon and and he forgets who's with McMahon. So he just growls. So he goes, Mr. McMahon, Mr. Grrr! And that was kind of not good for the Vader persona, but at least he covered it with a growl. So it's proven here.
He started beating up some lockers, right?
Yeah, he punched in a garbage can. Yeah, he's a little bit crazy here. So we saw what he did at the Rumble. He got eliminated, came back in, threw everybody out. Here on Raw, he kills Savio, he kills referees, he kills the WWF president. He doesn't give a shit, and he's slinging his manager around. Usually there's not dissension with your manager 24 hours upon your debut with the company. So it's very much getting over that Vader can't be controlled in a completely different way than Brian Pillman, who's playing the crazy gimmick. Vader's playing like this badass motherfucker gimmick here. And we start off hot. They capitalize on Vader immediately. Great way to bring him in. Trouble is, Vader came in a little too early. But they wanted to get this over for the Rumble and Raw, which I don't doubt. I don't give him any shit for. It's tremendous. But unfortunately, Vader actually has shoulder surgery scheduled, which is why they're doing this suspension short term anyway for Vader.
And to be honest, as far as I know, I don't think he didn't do anything in between now and the Rumble, right? Or not the Rumble, but WrestleMania. He's gone for a couple months, right?
Vader, I don't know when he comes back. I know there's an angle where they handcuff Yokozuna and beat him.
I know
beat on him, but I'm not sure if that's pre-Mania.
But
I think that's
leading into Mania because
I think that's the in your house.
The reason I was asking is it just feels like he does this super hot angle and then he's gone for 3 or 4 weeks and you don't even capitalize on it. And by the time he's back around, you almost forget about it. I mean, it's just, this is one of those angles that you need to do it and then capitalize on it the very next week and just have him keep on doing this until it gets to the point where a wrestler comes in to step up and say, hey, you're not going to do this anymore to our company. That's that sort of deal. But see, he does this and then he disappears and you can't continue it. And then it's like you kind of lose it forever. It's almost like that Jerry Lawler, Bret Hart angle from '93 where it was so hot and then Lawler had to go because obvious reasons. And they never rekindled that heat that they had on it. And I don't feel like Vader ever really regained what he got out of this initial 2-day run here where he was just built up as an unstoppable force. And right. I know we'll talk about it more in episodes to come, but it just sucks he came in with an injury because it'd have been awesome to see this week over week and what causes him to drop down a peg or two. Probably been a Click member, but, that's just bullshit. But either way, it kind of stinks he had that injury.
We move on with the show. It's Razor Ramon, the former Intercontinental Champion, now taking on Hunter Hearst Helmsley. He's doing the valet gimmick now, where he brings a different lady out week after week. This week, it's a lady by the name of Shay Marks. Go look her up, see what she's doing now. I have no idea. Insert promo.
You can look her up. Playboy model.
Oh,
Not
okay.
bad.
No idea. Insert promo from Ted DiBiase and the 1-2-3 Kid. DiBiase says Razor is whining about losing the Intercontinental title to Goldust last night at the Rumble, and the 1-2-3 Kid shows off a giant novelty-sized baby bottle, and Ted DiBiase shows up a diaper they have for Razor Ramon and all of his whining. So basically they're calling Razor a baby, and that'll play into the feud going forward. And I wrote here, I never noticed how much the Clique were getting their way match-wise during this period. We've seen a lot of click-on-click action here. This no different. Coming out of the Goldust story, Razor basically moves away from the Goldust story for as long as he can, wrestling Triple H on TV here tonight, and then now we learn basically he's going to be set up to wrestle the Kid at In Your House instead of Goldust, which was originally planned. So Razor getting his way there, getting to finish his initial feud with the 1-2-3 Kid at the February In Your House pay-per-view instead of the next chapter in the Goldust story. As the match gets going, it's typically Triple H in control more often than not throughout the match, but as Razor finally gets the upper hand, the 1-2-3 Kid shows up at ringside and shoves a giant novelty-sized baby bottle in Razor's mouth. And that makes Ramon fire up. He jumps out of the ring, lays out Triple H, then jumps out of the ring and chases the Kid around ringside, even being squirted with the baby bottle, and Ramon winds up getting counted out in about 8 minutes. And Razor gets pissed off, realizes he's lost the match, gets back in the ring, tries the Razor's Edge on Triple H, but Triple H escapes and runs off. Another bad night for the bad guy.
Yeah, I was wondering how he's going to get out of this one. I totally forgot about the Kid coming out and interrupting. Yeah, it's crazy how much the Clique guys got to work each other week after week after week, pay-per-view after pay-per-view after pay-per-view. One of them has a match with each other almost every single night, and I can't say that it's a bad thing because they can, most of them outside of Diesel can all work a decent match. Even Hunter at this point is pretty solid, so I'm not mad at it. It's just, again, it's one of those things that now that you didn't really know then. It just makes it less appealing because you know why it's happening instead of just enjoying it for what it is.
And Vince McMahon notes, for comedic purposes only, the final episode of Billionaire Ted's Wrestling War Room. And we head off to the Wrestling War Room where Billionaire Ted is good at buying old assets and repackaging them. Old cartoons, old movies, old wrestlers. Ted wants one original idea. Scheme, after they think about it in a generic version of the Jeopardy theme plays, Scheme Gene, has an idea, but it's too hot for TV, Steve. So call the hotline. 1-900 Scheme to find out Scheme Gene's idea here. And that's pretty much how we close out this final Billionaire Ted's Wrestling War Room before we move on to the press conferences.
Don't remind me. This is when the wheels fall off. They should have stopped it here. They had something decent, and then they just tried and tried and tried again, and it never really worked like those initial ones did.
It does continue all the way up until WrestleMania 12, where the Huckster and the Nacho Man will square off on the pre-show. Gets moved to the pre-show anyway. And I wrote here, oh, for fuck's sake, Doc Hendrix's Raw band is back. Why? What? They tried this several months ago. It lasted like 1 week. And it seems like it's been back ever since the Raw Bowl now. I have no idea what Doc did to convince Vince that this was a good idea. And we move on with the show.
It's just a waste of time here, man. I can't stand it either. It's so useless. But I guess it's better than hearing Doc Hendrix talk, I guess, right?
Is it better than DJ Ran all up in your area? That's the question.
Do they both suck? Yes.
We get
I think Meltzer made a comment about that your note there about the Satori or whatever. He's like, man, is that dated? Tells you how much Vince is up on it.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I have no idea either.
Vince McMahon in the ring with a promo from the man who won the Royal Rumble. It's Shawn Michaels. HBK didn't want to have to tell us he told us so, but he told us so. He won the Rumble, and he's going on to WrestleMania to challenge for the World Heavyweight title. Between now and WrestleMania, Shawn wants one thing, Owen Hart, and he'll do anything to get that match. Jim Cornette comes down to ringside. He says he's the one that signs Owen's contract. Owen proved his point already. He has nothing left to prove. And since Shawn Michaels says he'll do anything for the match, The only way Owen will get in the ring with Shawn Michaels would be if Shawn put up his Mania spot on the line. So if Owen can beat Shawn Michaels, Owen gets the main event for the world title at WrestleMania rather than Shawn Michaels. Shawn says if the Clique wants it, he'll do it. How nice. Shawn Michaels accepts the challenge, and he will wrestle Owen Hart. We will learn at the upcoming February In Your House pay-per-view. Shawn then pitches Jim Cornette over the top rope. Feels like he was getting some retribution for the spot they tried at the Royal Rumble the night before when Cornette didn't really get over the top rope on first try. So Shawn pitches Cornette out of the ring in segment, and we have Shawn Michaels versus Owen Hart. So a fun little story in between the road to WrestleMania here. You have the Rumble. This is the first time where somebody put their shot on the line.
This is really solid. I like the way Cornette kind of coerced him into it. This was a pretty decent, it was kind of long interview with Shawn. It took a little bit of time, but I thought they did a great job of kind of stalling and Cornette coming up with the idea here. So this is very well done. I enjoyed it. It should be a decent match on paper. It's the Clique. You know how that rolls, right?
Absolutely. And I know how Doc Hendrix's Raw band rolls as we get to listen, as you just pointed out, to guitarist Satori. Yeah, that's Satori. How many times can Vince say Satori in a minute? Go back and watch this episode of Raw to find out. I don't even know what a Satori is. Apparently Dave Meltzer knows all about Satori. I have no idea who the fuck this guy is, or why should I care that he's here in the Raw band?
I have no idea either.
Back to the ring. It's
I don't care to know.
I'm not even looking the guy up. Could give a shit less. You guys want to tell us who Satori is? You can send it to us on Twitter at Monday Warfare. Hell, send it to us at WrestleCopia. Send it to us at Wrestling Grenade. I could really give a shit less. You let us know who Satori is, because I'm not putting the time in to figure it out. As we go back to the ring, WWF Champion Bret Hart taking on Intercontinental Champion Goldust. Now with Marlena, she made her debut last night at the Royal Rumble. And I wrote here, well, it's not Hogan versus Warrior, as we see champion versus champion here. It's not title for title either, as Bret's belt, the only belt on the line. And Lawler calls Vince homophobic. I thought that was interesting here as Goldust made his way to ringside. We get an insert promo from Goldust and Marlena as the action finally gets going. Goldust takes over with some of the basics, works a hammerlock, try to figure four spot, but gets kicked through the ropes to the outside. At which point Goldust tries to leave, and I wrote, why? His title isn't on the line. He has nothing to lose here. He's challenging Bret for the world title. Why is he walking out? And then I wrote, oh, so that Razor Ramon could be seen waiting at the entrance so that he could throw Goldust back into the ring. Now it makes sense. And we go through 2 commercial breaks on this match, and we come back finally after the second commercial break, and Bret's in the middle of the 5 moves of doom and then just simply locks in the sharpshooter. Just like that. Goldust submits. And I wrote, wow, in 10 minutes. Way to build up Goldust. Undefeated. Then he submits a day after winning the Intercontinental title. Who booked this shit?
I don't know who booked it. It's interesting because, you building up Goldust. He just won your Intercontinental title, but he tapped out real quick here.
Immediately.
It wasn't even like he was struggling. He wasn't even struggling in the sharpshooter. He just tapped out to get out of there. And I guess you can play that up as if, you know what, he's not going to win the WWF title. His belt is not on the line. He's not going to lose anything. So I'm not going to get injured by sitting in this damn thing and struggling to get out of it. I'm not going to get hurt. So I'm just going to tap and get out of here, take my belt and go home. But at the same time, you also got to think too, Bret hasn't had a decent win since he won the belt at Survivor Series. It's been DQ after DQ. I guess you had the In Your House one, but it wasn't like decisive. It was kind of a roll-up type deal again. So he hasn't really had a dominant win as your champion, and he's not going to get one anytime between now and Mania. This may be it, to be honest with you. So I get it from that standpoint too, that maybe they thought like, okay, well, we're looking at the thing here. There's not going to be a clean win anywhere. Might as well just give you one. So it's interesting and it's shitty, but at the same time, like they backed themselves in a wall with this one.
Yeah, and me personally, if I'm booking, I'm not throwing Goldust under the bus here. And I don't care that he did the job.
I'm not either.
Could have easily been a pinfall of some sort or something like that. It wasn't even that, it was the sharpshooter. That's his finisher. I mean, if he gets it on somehow in a creative way, a clever way, and Goldust fights it for 20 seconds and then gives up, that's fine. You can do all of these things. These are all ways out of this that still get Bret Hart the win. The issue I had was they come back from commercial and Bret's in the middle of doing all of his setup moves, and then he just puts on the sharpshooter like he's working a job guy. These are the way Bret Hart finished off Skinner and Virgil way back in 1992.
Yeah.
This is Goldust. Yeah. This is Goldust here in 1996. He just won the Intercontinental title last night. He's undefeated on TV anyway. And Bret just, and like you said, as soon as he turns the sharpshooter over, the match is over. So just really odd.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I mean, maybe if Goldust went for, a leg drop or try to do one of his gimmicks, where he's turning himself on, whatever the hell you want to call it.
Right.
And Bret catches him, he just got sidetracked with his own gimmick. That's fine, but just Goldust looks like a complete bitch here. He may be the Intercontinental Champion, but he's nowhere near the level of the WWF Champion after this match. And that's not what you want for that IC title. You need that pretty close importance-wise to that WWF title. And when you're jobbing in 3 seconds to the sharpshooter, you're nowhere near that level.
Yeah, it's not so much that he lost, it's just how he lost that really pissed me off here booking-wise. As we close out the show, Bret Hart still in the ring. Vince McMahon joins him for a quick promo. Bret challenges Diesel to a steel cage match at the February In Your House after all the interference we've seen lately in the matches Bret Hart's been in. He wants a steel cage match here at In Your House, and that's what we wind up getting. Bret promises Undertaker a rematch as well. And I wrote originally that doesn't happen until next WrestleMania for the Undertaker, a rematch for the world title. I mean, not necessarily with Bret. However, I realized by the time we got through the next week's show that Bret will give the Undertaker another rematch here on TV. So I stand corrected. Segment of the night, Steve. Do I even need to ask? It was Doc Hendrix' Raw Band or Vader?
Yeah, that's it. It's Bret and Goldie now. Absolutely Vader, just killing everybody. The post-match promo with Cornette, where Cornette can't even control him. Just seeing, Gorilla had the empathy because everyone just grew up listening to him, and you felt a connection to him through his commentary. He was always important, whether they ever distinguished why he was important. Back in the day, they never really did, to be honest with you. You just knew when you heard Gorilla Monsoon, for some reason, he just had a level of importance that no other commentator had, to be honest with you, outside of maybe Jesse. So seeing him get beat up and stretchered out was unimaginable at the time. It's just something you was not expecting. And just very, very good job booking. Just solid. And that wasn't just like a hot short-term angle. That was long-term booking to get Vader over to a level that no other wrestler would. He took advantage of something no other wrestler got the opportunity to do.
Right.
And he knocked it out of the park. That powerbomb on Jack Doan, he just looked like a rag doll. Looked like Vader picked up a 30-pound wrestling buddy and just destroyed him. That's how it looked. So the whole segment's awesome. The match, the post-match, the stretcher job, the interview, everything Vader with this Raw.
Yeah, and I should note, as much as Vader beat the shit out of the referees and Savio Vega, he did go easy on Gorilla. He did a really good job taking care of Gorilla. I don't know if he was told to do that or he simply knew to do that.
He knew better.
He took care of Gorilla there, which was really cool. Going back and watching.
I do got to say I gotta say one thing. You mentioned him. Gorilla throws some awesome chops, man.
Oh, yeah.
You told me before, when they just stop, he doesn't go all the way through, they just stop. That's when they hurt a little more. He was laying him in on Vader, and Vader, like you said, took care of him. So even on the Vader bomb, he kind of just laid his head on him almost, like his upper torso. His body, his gut was on the mat. It didn't even hit him. So he did an excellent job of protecting Gorilla.
And the ratings are in and gaining that usual boost by coming off of the pay-per-view, the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. It was the WWF's Raw show, scoring a 2.9 rating to Nitro's 2.7. So just squeaks a win here this week, the WWF, by a 0.2. And I don't have the shares this week for some odd reason. Even Dave Meltzer didn't have the shares for this particular week of Raw and Nitro, but Raw does get the win. Does it get the win with you, Steve? Who's the real winner here? Is it Nitro or is it Raw?
It's crazy that I'm going to say this when you have a world title change, you have a tag title change on the same card. However, I got to go with Raw. That Vader angle is impactful. I still remember it as if it just happened. The Razor and Hunter match was pretty decent. Bret and Goldust was good for what it was. And I just feel like they did an overall better job of developing stories and making things matter. I was like, Nitro is just a Hogan show all over again, and it's nauseating at this point. It seems like the WWF at this point, they haven't completely turned away long-term booking. They are booking for the long haul and not just to pop a rating. If it fits into what they're doing on Raw to extend a feud or something, they're going to do it. They're not just doing things to pop a rating like Nitro is, where Nitro just seems out of control all the time, and Raw just seems more driven from point A to point B, whereas Nitro's just, hey man, we're on point A, let's go to point F at this point. You know, they don't have any clue what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm going Raw too, and sometimes, man, it only takes one segment on a show to sell me as far as the real winner, so to speak. A couple weeks ago, it was the Razor and Goldust brawl that ended the show and went outside in the snow. This time, it's the Vader angle. Literally, I cared for nothing else on the show. Goldust and Bret, it was what it was. It wasn't a very good match, wrestling-wise. And Triple H and Hunter, didn't really tickle my fancy either. Honestly, they kicked off the show with Vader. Had I stopped watching Raw after the storyline with Gorilla Monsoon, the angle with Gorilla, I'd have been happy there. I was already sold at that point. For me, Raw won because, to me, right now, WCW Nitro has become even more so the Hulk Hogan show over the last 2 months than it was prior to that. As Hogan seems to want to keep himself on TV. He wants to make himself noticeable at all times, so that I think he thinks it's going to elevate his push again, or his overness with the fans again, which is definitely not the case. It feels like the same shit every week on WCW Nitro. And they may throw us a bone here and there with an Eddie match or a Regal match or things like that. But in general, it's just way too much Hogan, and it's like the same shit every week. And WWE's trying some new things. They're trying to see what new they can give us. And this week, man, the Vader and Gorilla angle alone sold it for me. I go with Raw as well. And we're going to move on to the next day, January 23rd, Tuesday, Caesars Palace, Las Vegas, Nevada. Clash of the Champions 32, available now on patreon.com/WrestleCopia, part of the All Access tier, and the Watch Along series. Steve, we did Clash of the Champions 32 a few days ago, and we put it up on Patreon. That's patreon.com/WrestleCopia. You can subscribe right now, $5, and you can get all of our Watch Along, the entire Watch Along series, Coliseum videos, WCW, WWF pay-per-views, Saturday Night Main events, and so much more, including this Clash 32 here, which was not a very good show, but we had a lot of fun with me and you calling the action anyway.
Yeah, I mean, watching, with somebody or just talking about it makes it way more entertaining than what it would be if you was just watching it by yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't have made it through the actual show itself without that, because it was a train wreck.
Absolutely not.
To be polite. And I'm going to run through the results as quickly as I can so we can get into Nitro here. It's Public Enemy taking on the Nasty Boys. It's Public Enemy's. Technically, this was to be their debut, even though they wrestled the American Males on Nitro a week or two prior. But here we see a double disqualification, is what's noted as online anyway, in 4 minutes. I don't know if the match actually gets going. These guys basically just beating the shit out of each other in the ring and out of the ring, and finally a bell sounds and this thing is over with. No contest, double DQ, call it what you will. It's 4 minutes of brawling. It's really there to set up the Super Brawl match, the return match at Super Brawl, which will be a street fight. Dean Malenko over Alex Wright with a jackknife pin after going after Alex Wright's bad leg. Match went 5 minutes, 31 seconds. Kevin Sullivan defeated the Disco Inferno by forfeit because Disco no-showed to attend the Rob Parker Sherri wedding. Instead, we get a singing Elvis delivering a telegram to Sullivan, and Sullivan proceeds to beat the shit out of the singing Elvis, who I believe was jobber Mike Winner. Brian Pillman scored the win over Eddie Guerrero with a crossbody collision. Pillman wound up landing on top, getting the win 5 minutes, 50 seconds. This is the infamous match where Brian Pillman goes out of the ring and grabs Bobby Heenan from behind by his jacket. Live and unedited on the Clash of the Champions on the WWE Network, Bobby Heenan drops the F-bomb. What does he say, Steve? What the fuck are you doing? Yeah. Something along those lines.
Something like that.
Right on TBS. And the new WCW Tag Team Champions, Sting and Luger, over the Blue Bloods. 7 minutes, 46 seconds. The action there was bleh. But Regal, 5 stars on his facials and mannerisms throughout this entire match here. Mexican heavyweight champion Conan gets the win over Psychosis in 5 minutes and 26 seconds. An odd match. They tried a little bit of American work, a little bit of Mexican work. The crowd didn't really know how to take it. They did pop for some of the moves, however, as Lucha Libre begins being infused into the WCW product. We also had the Rob Parker and Sister Sherri wedding. Or maybe we don't. Madusa shows up as she appears to be Rob Parker's fried pie on the side. The story here makes no sense because Sherri didn't know about Madusa, which makes sense, but apparently Madusa didn't know about Sherri, which makes no sense whatsoever, as she was literally camped out in a trailer behind where they were getting married, and jumps out and attacks Sherri. They brawl in the parking lot to end the segment as Disco Inferno steals all the champagne. Feels like something he would do in real life. Very Disco Inferno-y.
Yeah.
And we close out the clash. It was Ric Flair and the Giant over Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, 9 minutes, 51 seconds. Easily the biggest heat of the night, biggest pops of the night as well here. And we did, as you mentioned, see Kevin Green of the Steelers and Miss Elizabeth in the corner of the formerly named Mega Powers here. And you pointed it out. You corrected me because I read something. Maybe I got it wrong, I guess. I thought that it said Savage wanted the finish changed because of whatever. He was doing the job or something. You pointed out, I went back and looked myself too because I wanted to know what the hell I got wrong. It was Ric Flair who was supposed to take the leg drop and do the job here. And this is very important moving forward in this next show, by the way. This next Nitro. He was supposed to do the job to the leg drop at the Clash. And he had enough and threatened to quit the company. And so Hogan, knowing Flair's value, allowed the finish to be changed. Imagine that, Hulk Hogan allowing a finish to be changed with Flair and the Giant going over. I think it was Flair that got the pin, if I'm not mistaken, but it wasn't on Hulk Hogan. That's still coming.
I can't remember who got the pin. I mean, by the time the show was over, I was tapped out.
Yeah, I was done.
It was
too.
a very rough Clash of the Champions, and I think that's one of them shows it's gonna be better just listening to it than you are watching it. Because Heenan, I'm sure, had a blast with the wedding stuff, and Tony was calling the action, so it's probably going to be a lot better listening to it than you are watching it. I'll give you that.
We move on to the following Monday, WCW Monday Nitro, January 29, 1996. They're in Canton, Ohio, in front of 3,500 fans. Dave Meltzer reports virtually no paper. Sold out several hours in advance. So this may be our first Nitro that's sold out. No paper. Nobody giving away free tickets here in Canton this week.
Ohio loves them some wrestling, huh?
I wonder if it's the fallout of Miss Elizabeth's return. Everybody coming to see Liz? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. According to the Melts, it's probably just a one-off. If you've seen her on TV, she ain't going to look much different in person. So I don't know. Who knows what drew them? Like, Nitro is weird in the early stages. You don't necessarily... I mean, you're really getting the same crap over and over and over again. So I don't know what's really drawing anything at all. I don't even know why people are tuning in to Nitro, to be honest with you.
And on this night of Nitro, Conan beats the one-man gang. So Conan's been in the company, on TV in the company for a week, and has had one match so far on TV, and he's already beat the gang for the U.S. title. That's how important the U.S. title was, at least with the gang holding it, as he was a placeholder basically to get the belt off Kensuke Sasaki. And the match is slated to air at this point, February 4th, on the main event. So that's how important the belt is. As all the belts seem to be de-emphasized now all of a sudden with Eric Bischoff here in this Nitro era, as even the U.S. title is being changed on the main event of all shows. And the finish apparently was the old WrestleMania, the best way I can describe it for everybody that might know it, the WrestleMania 8 finish there. Conan hold the Shawn Michaels Tito match where Shawn held the rope until Tito lost balance. Shawn lands on top, gets the win. That's basically the story here. That's how Conan beats the gang. At least that's according to Meltzer. I haven't seen the match in so long, I can't say. As Nitro kicks off, following that dark match, I have no idea what Pepe was wearing here. I think it's a Dracula cape. Kind of looked very reminiscent of King Kong Bundy in his WWF TV debut.
I have no idea, man. I'm not paying attention to Pepe.
I just do it for the fun of it, Steve. Something to do.
I guess. It's better than listen to Mongo, right?
Mongo should put all those up on eBay. You get some money for those now. Everybody's dressing their dogs up in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Mongo was ahead of the game.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Unless Deborah took them all.
That might be. they might fit her boobs. One of them.
Half of one.
We go to the ring and we kick off the show with Hulk Hogan, with Miss Elizabeth in his corner taking on Ric Flair with Jimmy Hart in his. So we kick Nitro off with Hogan versus Flair. And Hogan down with Linda's sister, and Miss Elizabeth makes her Nitro debut now. And the match is back and forth early on, in and out of the ring, 3 times during this match, by the way. And we go through a commercial break. Jimmy Hart tries to interfere, but gets kicked into the guardrail by Hulk Hogan. You don't see Jimmy Hart take bumps often, but he'd take one for the Hulkster, brother. Ric Flair actually gets heat on Hogan. Again, this must play into the whole thing of Ric Flair threatening to quit last week, because not only does his team win at the Clash, but he gets heat on Hogan. Maybe the first guy to actually get legit several minutes of heat on Hulk Hogan, even locks in his figure 4 leg lock. But Hulk Hogan manages to Hulk up. We get the big leg drop, brother. But Jimmy Hart up on the apron, distracting Nick Patrick. So once again, Nick Patrick having a rough week already. Is Nick the only referee here for screw jobs, I'm wondering? Arn Anderson runs into the ring. Jimmy Hart holds Elizabeth, while Arn steals her high heel shoe and gives it to the Nature Boy in the ring. Ric Flair drives the shoe into Hogan's eye and gets the pin in 13 minutes. So Hogan drops a leg. There's a distraction, causing the pinfall to be delayed. By the time Hogan covers, he gets a 2 count. Flair has the shoe, stabs it, supposedly, into Hulk Hogan's eye. We see Hulk Hogan gig, blades over top of his eyeball, and Ric Flair, for the very first time, pins Hulk Hogan. So you tell me Ric Flair threatening to quit didn't have a little clout here. He gets the win at the Clash, he gets heat on Hogan, and he pins Hulk Hogan all within a week of threatening to quit the company. I don't know that Bischoff gave a shit, but clearly Hulk Hogan did.
Yeah, absolutely. I like your line here, too, could play to politics, brother. That's perfect. Yeah, I mean, we can trash Hogan all we want. You know, he did play games and politics, and he was able to book the way he wanted to for himself. But at the end of the day, all he cared about was making money, and he knew those guys that could help him do it. He's not going to get rid of those types that can help him draw money. And obviously, Ric Flair is one of the greatest of all time. He knows how to talk people into seats, and you need somebody like Ric Flair around. So he wasn't stupid. He knew what he needed to do. He gave Flair a bone. It appeased him, obviously, because Flair obviously never leaves. So, yeah, Hogan was smart in that sense. My problem is that this match just has no appeal anymore. I don't know if it's because it's obviously because of Nitro, but the way Flair has been treated by Hogan for the entire time he's been in WCW, it almost seems like as soon as Hogan walked through the door, Flair's just become a joke when it comes to fighting Hogan. He doesn't the way Hogan never sells for him, no matter what Flair does. I know it's different in this match, and it's kind of a one-off, and so this little rant kind of seems to be out of place a little bit just because of what Hogan ended up doing. But at the same time, you know it's not going to be the consistent going forward. This is not going to be the new normal at all. Like, I just can't take Ric Flair seriously at all during this time frame. He's not believable, and it's crazy to think that when we're watching him in the Grenade in 1989, kind of at the peak. I don't know if it was the peak. His peak lasted forever, but he was still at the top of his game and one of the greatest, obviously one of the best at that time. And you felt like it's a complete different dynamic. You know, Flair's in the ring with anybody. You don't think he's going to lose in 1989. In 1996, it's either, okay, Flair's going to get his ass kicked, or how's he going to cheat to win? And that really seems to be the only way for him to get anything. And that all goes back on Hogan.
Yeah, and I did write a couple sentences here, and a little bit of it's redundant. I did say some of it already, but I want to read this because I have one quick other thing I want to say about that. And I wrote, Flair works Hogan over for a solid portion of this match. He won the match at the Clash after originally supposed to lose to the leg drop. Now he does something he's never been allowed to do, which is pin Hulk Hogan. All of this after Flair threatened to quit the company due to the booking. And I wrote, you're right, I wrote, two can play politics, brother. And it's about time someone stood up for themselves. And that's how I looked at this, because I'm not a big fan of politics. I'm not a big fan of the clique and guys refusing to do jobs just because they refuse to do jobs. In this instance, I didn't look at it like that at all. I looked at it as like, finally, someone with enough clout value-wise with the company, has stood up for themselves rather than playing politics to keep their spot on top. Flair's playing politics because he's just sick of Hogan's shit. And I'm glad that somebody finally did that here. Somebody made Hogan take notice that it took Ric Flair, but it was going to take somebody the value of Ric Flair to make Hogan, I don't even want to say realize, but make Hogan, I'll use the word realize, that this is getting out of control. And I'm not saying he realizes that, but he realizes that it's pissing somebody off.
Yeah, and I think we've been talking about it each week, how he's in panic mode and he's trying all these things to get himself back over with the crowd. And I think this is Flair's way of saying, look, dude, it's not working what you're trying to do. It is not working. You need to cool it or you're just going to piss everybody off. And we've been talking about it from the beginning, how everybody's protecting Hogan. They don't want to even throw shots at him in the ring. It just looks cartoony and fake. So you almost feel like nobody's going to have the balls to go up and say something to him unless it's a Ric Flair. Like, I don't even see Sting confronting him. Obviously, Sting's not in the ring with him every week, but I don't even see Sting like being one of those guys that go up to him and say, look, you need to cut it out. I don't see it happening. Savage is okay with it because, hell, he's had 2 title runs in a month. I mean, he's cool with it. I just don't know of anybody else that's on that level. He's not going to listen to Arn Anderson, and that's no knock on Arn Anderson. It's just the reality of the situation.
Right.
It has to be a Sting, a Savage, or a Flair, and that's really it. Nobody else has the clout or the ability to say anything to him to make it impactful. And so kudos to Ric Flair for realizing the issues at hand and doing something to address it, at least for a couple weeks. So, again, good job to him. It's about damn time, like you said.
This week on Saturday night, we're going to see Sting in action, as well as the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan, and get a load of these 2 matches. Ric Flair taking on Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero goes up against Lex Luger, which should also be very intriguing. It makes me want to pull out this copy of Saturday Night. I want to see both of these matches. Very curious.
I want to see if Lex is going to put his working boots on.
I doubt it.
Eddie Guerrero
they might go old school Tommy Rich here. Lex is probably going to tell Eddie, I learned this from, we're going to do a match I learned from Tommy Rich way back in 1989. It's called Armbar.
And then I'm going to climb up on the top rope and do an arm drag on you. How about that, Lex? Not today. Not on a tape
not
Saturday
happening.
night. Not in center stage, buddy. This ain't 1989.
The show rolls on, and it's the in-ring return of the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, their very first match together since SummerSlam 92. 3.5 years ago, the return of the Road Warriors as they take on a brand new team as well. Well, sort of brand new anyway. It's Ming teaming with the Barbarian. And they had a very brief cup of coffee as a team way back in 1991, right around that WrestleMania 7 time period. Here, they're now called the Faces of Fear. And how many times are they going to recycle the name Faces of Fear here in WCW? Kevin Sullivan must have really liked this name. He used it with the 3 Faces of Fear. Now Barbarian Haku are the Faces of Fear. It's not like it's been all those years ago that they used that name. And we're already using it again here. And I say that it's a new team. It is a new team. They're not necessarily new to the company. Ming's been here for a while. Barbarian's been here for a few months under a hood, teaming with his old pal, the Warlord, as the Super Assassins. It is our first look as the Barbarian as the Barbarian here. And so I wrote, wow, man, sacrificing a brand new team to put over another debuting team here. It's kind of an odd choice, but they really don't have a lot of teams to choose from.
Give them the American males. It'd have been all right.
I wouldn't mind it. And the Road Warriors get a pretty solid pop. I wouldn't call it a Road Warrior pop, but they do get a really nice pop and a LOD chant as they enter the ring. Bobby Heenan goes between calling them the Legion of Doom and the Road Warriors repeatedly throughout the show, but that's okay because they'd always been the Legion of Doom and the Road Warriors. So it wasn't Vince that created the whole Legion of Doom bit. It was Paul Ellering many years prior. So in case anybody's wondering why they're getting away with it, that's why. Not exactly 1989 Road Warriors versus SST type stuff here, but this had its moments, I thought, and 4 legit badasses is always fun, no matter what. Curious, why not someone smaller, I thought, though. Like you said, the American males, even though they're baby faces, I was really surprised. Why not Job Guys from the Saturday Night Show to really get over the Road Warriors?
What's that Canyon team? What's Canyon's team?
The Men at Work team.
Yeah, get them out there.
So I wrote that. I thought here, that's kind of odd that they chose Barbarian and Haku or Ming, whatever you want to call them here, instead of smaller guys to really get the Road Warriors over, instead of a couple of 300-pounders, much like the Roadies. It doesn't make him look as badass here. Hawk rocking tights all the way up to his tits and no cells. The pile driver on Ming, I had to pop for that. That story goes all the way back to Memphis when Hawk no-sold Jerry Lawler's pile driver. Stood straight up. Lawler is the one that gave him the idea, and it stuck with him ever since. Hawk continued to use that spot, and it got a big pop from the fans here as he takes the pile driver from Ming and jumps straight up before Ming can even get to his feet. Awesome crowd pop. Barbarian comes in. Could you believe the Barbarian power bombed Animal? And it wasn't even an awkward power bomb. I mean, it was legit badass. I'm going to kill you power bomb. I wrote, holy shit. Never seen that before. I bet Animal's never felt that before. As the match winds down, after screwing the spot up, they do it again. Barbarian goes back up to the middle rope for a second time so that Animal can clothesline him on the way down. We get the hot tag to Hawk. They try the Doomsday Device on the Barbarian. The crowd goes nuts as they set up for it. They know what's coming, so they remember. The people remember the Road Warriors and their finisher. But Ming pushes Hawk off the top rope, so Barbarian instead pile drives Animal, tries it a second time, but Hawk goes to the top rope and clotheslines Barbarian, and the Road Warriors get the win 9 minutes and 5 seconds. I thought there were a lot of sloppy spots in here, and Hawk looked a little lethargic, to be honest with you, selling, and he was out of position at least twice. But overall, it was a fun little match. If you're a fan of these guys, you can get through some of this.
Yeah, you made that ending sound a lot better than it was. There's a pretty long delay for Hawk to get up to the top to do the clothesline. You made it sound like it was fluid, which it definitely wasn't. It was very sloppy, missed his spots. Hawk looked a little rough, like you said. A couple things I want to point out, though. The commentary is just brutal at this point outside of Heenan. I don't know if you picked up on it, but he said Flair has become one of the elites in the business by beating Hogan, even though he's like world champion a week ago.
Well, yeah, from the very moment he pinned him, Eric Bischoff sold it like the improbable just happened. Like Ric Flair just upped his game. Like he wasn't the level of a main eventer until he did that. Like it was the hugest, most unfathomable thing. Like Barry Horowitz just pinned Hulk Hogan, basically.
Right. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like Bischoff just completely forget that he is world champion a week ago. And what's funny is too, Heenan says that the Road Warriors are two of the toughest guys out of Chicago. 2 minutes after Mongo tells us that he remembers seeing them come up in Minnesota.
I think Mongo, I heard, actually somehow I ended up watching this show twice. I think one night I watched it while I was going to bed, and then I actually watched it to take notes again. The first time I felt the same way as you did. The second time, I think what Mongo was referencing was he saw them in the AWA. Not that they were even though they are from Minnesota. I don't think Mongo meant it that way. I think he meant he saw them in the AWA, whereas Chicago, Bobby's selling the fact that they're born in Chicago. Kayfabe, born in Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't think Mongo was actually mentioning where they're from. He just happened to see them wrestle in the area that they were from.
Which is cool. It just kind of goes to show that Mongo has, I don't know if he did some studying or what, or if he actually did watch the AWA, because I know everybody knows who the Road Warriors are. It doesn't even matter. So that makes sense. And then Bischoff called Goldust a RuPaul wannabe, which was kind of funny. But yeah, the commentary is a little rough. This match was sloppy. I'm with you, man. They needed smaller guys in there to make the Road Warriors look like the Road Warriors. I have the comment for a later episode of the Monday Warfare show, but I can just go ahead and use it now. For whatever reason, man, after SummerSlam 92, I never enjoyed the Road Warriors again after that last WWF run. They're nothing to write home about in WWF. They were kind of just there. We've talked about that before, not on a show, but just in private, how they had to save it for a pay-per-view, and by the time it got to them, they're almost on their way out, it felt like. So I don't know what it is. They just don't look the same here. Animal looks rough.
Much slower.
Hawk looks rough.
Hawk is like Animal's trying his ass off, I think, but he's also just It's Father Time, I think, with Animal. He's not terrible here, but Hawk, his timing is off. Like you said, he's not where he's supposed to be several times during the match. The very first time he gets put in the corner after he gets tagged in, I don't know if it's Barbarian or Ming, and they're laying in shots in the corner. Hawk just kind of bends over and doesn't even move while they're hitting him, doesn't sell, doesn't move around. It just looked like somebody that was just not even there. And it was bad. And you're right, the finish wasn't as fluid as I made it sound, because I even thought to myself, Barbarian hits the pile driver. Then he goes for a second one, and then Hawk comes off the clothesline. And I thought to myself right then, was Hawk supposed to come off on the first one? And they had to ad-lib the pile driver because Hawk was completely on the opposite side of the ring, on a completely different ring post than where they're wrestling at. So yeah, it wasn't pretty by any means, but we'll see what happens moving forward.
Just makes you wonder if there's a reason he was lethargic.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to get into it because I can't say for sure right now, but it certainly appeared that way. That was my initial impression when I watched them sell, for lack of a better term, early in the match.
I was just going to say, did you hear the story that Bret Hart said?
I have no idea.
Recently about him. I don't know if it's recent or what. I think in one of his podcasts, he was talking about how they had a match. Like, I guess him and the Harts and the LOD both wanted to really have a match in that first run that they were there. And how Hawk just popped a bunch of pills right before they went out. And Bret's like, what the hell are you doing? And it caused the match to be not as good. And then Hawk came back in 97 at the Canadian Stampede, I believe. And he's like, this is for the match from 90 or 91, whatever it was. And they went out and had a classic. So Hawk didn't forget. It's just his demons, and I'm not saying that's what's going on here at all. I don't know what was Hawk doing in between like 92. I know obviously
Japan.
Animal's over in Japan.
Hawk made stops in Smoky Mountain. He made stops in ECW. He was in Japan quite a bit, did the Hellraisers gimmick with Kensuke Sasaki. So Hawk was around. Hawk even he came back, and don't forget, Hawk's been here. Animal's one's come back. Hawk's been here off and on in WCW. Right. So he did the Kurosawa bit last year.
With the Camaro.
Yes, the Camaro. The Z21 Camaro.
Yes.
That's right, way back when. Okay. So Hawk's been in and out.
Yeah. So Hawk's been the one working.
Yeah, it's Animal collecting the Lloyds of London. Yeah, Animal's been collecting the Lloyds of London.
Good for him.
One of the many guys who made it impossible for wrestlers to ever sign up for Lloyds of London again. Kudos to Kurt Hennig, Rick Rude, Road Warrior Animal, and whoever got away with that.
Ted DiBiase.
Promo time. Me and Gino. What's that? Ted DiBiase? I didn't know that.
Did Ted have one?
I have no idea.
I thought you mentioned Ted.
I'm not sure.
I know he had the back injury.
Right.
I don't know.
Promo time with Gene Okerlund. He's got Kevin Sullivan and Hugh Morris in the ring. Kevin says he made a pact with the Horsemen. He thought Arn Anderson was a man of his word, but Brian Pillman is still out of control. This brings Arn and Pillman to ringside. Arn asks Pillman where he was during the previous Hogan and Flair match. Arn chalks it up to immaturity on Brian Pillman's part. Anderson says he warned Pillman verbally. He even slapped the shit out of Pillman, no kidding. But nothing has worked. So if Pillman's going to act like a child, it's time for some tough love. And I thought this was a little ridiculous, maybe, but it was Arn, so I bought it a little bit. Arn starts taking off his belt. He's going to whip Brian Pillman here in the middle of the ring. And Brian Pillman sells it like, Arn's got a gun. Brian Pillman drops down to his knees, begs off, please, Arn, don't whip me. Don't whip me. And at this point, Kevin Sullivan and Hugh Morris attack both men. And I wrote, why? Kevin was about to get his wish. Arn Anderson was about to lay into Brian Pillman, but the Dungeon attack Arn and Pillman instead. Pillman winds up getting knocked to the floor, and instead of saving Arn Anderson from a 2-on-1 beatdown, Pillman peeks over the apron and watches Arn get beat up. So interesting there to see Brian Pillman do that. He's afraid to get back in the ring, and Kevin Sullivan finally sees Brian Pillman hiding in the outside. Sullivan takes Arn Anderson's belt and begins laying into the back of Brian Pillman, really lashing him. Stiff, hard shots to the back of Brian Pillman on the outside. Meanwhile, in the ring, Arn Anderson recovers DDT on Hugh Morris. And back in the ring, the Dungeon are run off as Arn Anderson gets on the microphone. He informs Kevin that the Horsemen police themselves. And now Arn demands a tag team match. Arn and Pillman versus Sullivan and Hugh Morris. Brian Pillman says he got them into this mess and he'll get them out. And Brian Pillman shows off all of the welts on his back from the belt.
Yeah, this shit made no sense, man. So Sullivan wants Arn to take care of Pillman. He's about to take care of Pillman, and then Sullivan and Hugh Morris attack him. Like, it makes absolutely no sense at all. Well, what are they doing? He's doing what you want him to do, and then he's going to do all your dirty work. If you want Pillman beat up, let Arn beat the shit out of him with the belt for however long he beats him with the belt. give him that tough love, but you stop all that from happening just to get a few lashes in, and then Hugh Morris to get his ass kicked. So this made no sense to me. I don't know what they're going for here or what they're doing. I know it all comes to a head at a Super Brawl that we've already, kind of watched on Patreon. You can listen to that, but it just doesn't make any sense at all what this segment was supposed to establish. I'm lost. I'm lost with this one.
Yeah, and like you pointed out, we know where this is going, and it makes a little bit of sense. The belt, makes a little bit of sense here.
Yeah,
with the whipping of Brian Pillman. However, at the same time, the way they built this up, it just made no sense. Again, like you pointed out, and it makes even less sense since everybody becomes friends eventually, before too long. We move on with Nitro. Mean Gene Okerlund in the ring with sister Sherri. Looks like it's supposed to be a promo. Gene wants to talk to her about what happened at the Clash of the Champions. She's actually in a short dress, high heels. She's not dressed to wrestle. But Madusa attacks anyway from the top rope. And it's a match, I guess. The bell rings. We have a match, even though Sherri's not dressed for it. A wild fight as they spill out to the ring pretty quickly. A suplex on the floor. Sherri walks across Madusa's chest in the ring. I felt like there was a little bit of a shoot there. I forgot how much I hated the back leg round kick until Eric Bischoff busted out not once, not twice, but 3 times in this 90-second match. And all it is a fucking kick. Nothing special at all.
It's like a front kick.
Yeah,
it's like a front kick, and he's calling it that.
It's like if you kicked a fucking footballer. I have no idea. Sherri winds up going to the top rope, but Madusa comes over. She tries to slam Sherri off, but Sherri turns it into an inside cradle and gets the win in 1 minute and 47 seconds. But Sherri has little time to celebrate as post-match, Madusa attacks Sherri from behind right after the win and kills her. Dumps her right on the top of her head with an unplanned German suplex. Knocked Sherri silly, says DeMeltz, and Sherri was extremely unhappy with this. This was not planned. I believe the attack was planned. There was no discussion of the German being done. Sherri wasn't ready for it, and I guess Madusa got the okay backstage, and Sherri was never informed by Madusa or anyone else. So then Madusa looks like she gets a little violent, grabs Sherri by her hair, repeatedly rams the back of her head into the mat. Bischoff says Madusa should have stayed with the WWF because she could have taken out 90% of the men. Mongo says she's more of a man than Goldfarb or whatever the hell he says there. Madusa finally debuts in the ring, and this is the story they give her, but not for long. This also marks the end of Sherri Martel in WCW.
This is it for her in general, right? Outside of probably some independence.
Yeah, no more mainstream Sherri. She popped up there with Kurt Angle.
That was great. It's unfortunate. It's another one of those talents that couldn't get out of her own way. I think we mentioned it on our Clash, how she showed up and she looked a little rough, didn't get her hair done and things like that. So the problem is when you got a guy who doesn't really appreciate, I wouldn't necessarily say the history, it just doesn't have any connection to you, you're going to have issues. I know Missy had issues with Bischoff, Sherri, obviously people like Ric Flair, those type of people. When the boss doesn't care about you, you got to tread lightly or you're going to be let go. And that's kind of what it feels like here. Yeah, that German was brutal, man.
Yeah, dumped her right on her head. And I think I even read, and I'm not sure if it was the Observer or the Torch or what it was, that Sherri already knew that she was in deep. She was in the doghouse. And I guess that's why she didn't complain about some of the other things recently. I don't even know that she complained about this German. But she winds up getting canned anyway because of her issues, which is unfortunate because even though Sherri had peaked, I'd say at this point in her career, she was still a very valuable piece to have at ringside, I think.
I think so, too.
We continue on with the main event. It's WCW champion Macho Man Randy Savage taking on the Giant. And as the match gets going, we see Woman, Linda McMahon, her sister, one more. Every time Macho Man comes out, there's one less lady, two less lady. Linda Hogan. I apologize, Linda Balea, if you will. And her sister, they come out during of the entrance, but there's no Macho Man. Where is the Macho Man? I also wanted to note that I think last Nitro there were 6 women. Then there were down to 4 on Clash. Now we're down to 3. Of course, Liz isn't out here at this point. But Macho Man is not coming down the aisle. Where is the Macho Man? Well, he's not beat up backstage. He's coming out, I'm assuming, from the crowd, from the opposite side. He attacks the Giant from behind with the WCW title. An immediate disqualification. Eric Bischoff announces that he thinks they threw the match out. Well, duh, Eric. Macho Man's hitting the Giant repeatedly with the fucking title belt. And I thought this was really cheap way for a top babyface to get out of fighting a guy in a championship match. I didn't think it looked good for the Macho Man. And Ric Flair comes to the ringside. He attacks Randy Savage, pulls him out to the floor, hits him with the chair. Flair pops the referee, so this whole probation, suspension shit, it's already out the window. Giant and Flair do a beatdown on Macho Man in the ring, choke slam on Randy Savage. The Giant tries a second one, but Hulk Hogan finally, with a bandaged up eye from that stiletto heel in the eyeball earlier in the show, Hogan out with a chair, and he nails Giant with some serious chair shots to the skull, knocks the Giant from the ring as Hugh Morris and Ming and the one-man gang, Kevin Sullivan, all of them take chair shots. And I laugh at the gang as he takes a chair shot and runs about 6 feet and does a flying leap over the top rope to sell for the Hulkster brother because the gang knows what's good for him. And it's the Zodiac who never enters the ring, mind you. Zodiac never enters the ring, takes a chair shot. It's him and Kevin Sullivan holding the Giant back. And no chair shot from Zodiac. Very wise as they continue to play that storyline up subtly on the underneath. Meanwhile, Savage gets disqualified before the match can even start. What did you think here? I didn't think that looked good for a babyface. Not well booked from my end anyway.
No, I agree with you. It's probably Hogan's revenge for Savage giving him this shit last week after he won the belt. Yeah, he's like, you take that, brother. I got you. It's just the same old shit, different show, man. Dungeon of Doom come out to attack 10 deep, and then Hogan and Savage fend them off with chair shots. I did put down here, he comes out, he has the eye bandaged up, blood all over his forehead. He's clearing house with the chair, has all the women. He's really he's pulling no punches to get himself over. And this crowd kind of popped for him a little bit more than what we have been hearing. So I guess it's working. I doubt it. But I like the ending after all the shenanigans when they get to the announce table, which I don't think you've talked about that yet. But the match itself, it was very cheap for a top babyface like you said to do that. Why? Are you afraid of the Giant? I mean, what's the deal there?
Yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense to me for a babyface. It seems like something a heel would do, but not a babyface there. It's almost like Macho Man was afraid to wrestle the Giant, so he just beat the shit. It wasn't even like they were feuding. The Giant didn't he never did anything.
It's just a match that we haven't seen yet, so they just gave it.
Well, we did get the match. We've seen the match, but it's been several weeks.
Well, yeah, so like Bischoff, he probably forgot, and like everybody else, because they don't matter.
Book it again.
Yeah.
Well, we don't really get a match this time, so it's really not a match. And as you pointed out, after Hogan runs everyone off of those chair shots, it's Jimmy Hart, the Giant, and Ric Flair invading the announce area. Mongo looks down at the table, shaking his head, hiding his face. I'm assuming he's smiling. That's the only thing I could come up with here, as the heels are going nuts on commentary. They steal the microphones, the headsets. Eric Bischoff leaves. Mongo eventually leaves. They're selling the Super Brawl double cage matches. It's Savage defending the title against Ric Flair in the cage, and then the Giant taking on Hogan in an uncensored type cage match. Eric Bischoff, Mongo, they take off. Heenan, meanwhile, tries to calm Ric Flair down. Flair isn't buying into it. He's not even selling Bobby Heenan's existence at this point. This was classic, out of control, mid-90s Flair here. I thought it was great shit, probably the best shit Ric Flair's done in forever, as I just loved it when he got this serious, and you could see the arteries and the vein in his head bulging and the red face, and he's hot, man. Ric Flair is pissed off as we get a shot of the referee and Hulk Hogan, the bandaged up Hulk Hogan, helping a slumping Macho Man down the aisle back to the dressing room. So the heels got the best. Even though Hogan cleared the ring, the heels seem to get the better of the baby faces tonight. I don't know how that is, but that's how it is. Segment of the night, Steve. Flair versus Hogan. Flair finally getting a win. That Roadie's return. Whatever the main event was, whatever you want to call it, what we just saw. What's your segment of the night?
It's getting harder and harder to pick a favorite segment on these Nitros just because it's just overrun with Hogan shit. But if I had to pick something, I'm going with that Flair stuff at the end. I thought it was great, him getting over the pay-per-view. They actually did a good job of building towards that with this last segment. Savage getting destroyed, obviously. The only problem I have with it is it shouldn't have taken until the last minute of the show for them to tell us who was inside the cage matches, because they kept on saying there's a double cage, a super brawl, most of the show, and then finally, when Ric Flair takes over the commentary table, he's like, "Savage, I got you in the cage, and Giant's going to take care of you, Hogan." That should be given at the very beginning, and you build towards that. Don't wait till the last minute, because the last minute of the show is you're either going to be on Nitro already or you're going to be on Raw already. I don't think you're going to flip at the last minute because you want to see how the show closes. And so whatever show you're on is probably what you're going to watch. So if people miss that last minute of Nitro, I don't know if they did an overrun here or not, but if you miss that last minute of Nitro, you're going to miss the two big matches being announced. So very stupid way to do things, but I'm going with Flair. And that vein, my dad has that vein. So when that vein's popping out, to stay clear because it's a bad time. So I know all about that. And so seeing Ric Flair get it, he's in rare form and very entertaining.
Yeah, I wrote down here, I wonder if I can pick Ric Flair having an aneurysm as my segment of the night, but it's such a short piece of the show. I actually went with Flair and Hogan, not because it was a good match, but because I got to see Ric Flair pin Hulk Hogan. So that was what was most important to me on the show. And again, I'm just picking because of Ric Flair pinning Hulk Hogan. There was really nothing noteworthy on the entire show, honestly, from top to bottom, outside of the fact that Flair finally got a win over the Hulkster and played a little politics himself. So it was what it was as we move on to Monday Night Raw for January 29th. And this was taped last week in Stockton, California at the Civic Auditorium. It's Super Monday because it follows Super Bowl Sunday, I suppose. Diesel in the ring with the British Bulldog. Feels like Bulldog has really fallen down the card already. Can't be worse than In Your House Diesel versus Bulldog, I wrote. Could it? Diesel dominates to begin until Bulldog goes to his legs, and I thought, oh no. Here we go again, ramming Diesel's leg against the ring post, and it's more of the same old boring shit from that October In Your House once again. Lots of leg work by Davey Boy, and by leg work, I don't mean the good stuff. Lots of laying down leg locks and a lot of stomping by the Bulldog. Yokozuna makes his way to ringside. Of course, another member of Camp Cornette is Yoko. Exposed turnbuckle in the corner for Davey Boy to use, but it's Diesel who lands snake eyes on Davey into the exposed steel. Diesel makes the cover, but Jim Cornette distracts the referee, allowing Yoko to get in the ring and go for a leg drop, but Diesel moves, and Yoko winds up leg dropping the Bulldog instead. Diesel covers and gets the win in about 7 minutes. What's your thoughts?
It was all right. I mean, nothing special. They're starting that turn on Yokozuna that culminates, I think, next week's Monday Warfare show, if I remember right. Yeah, it was okay. It didn't go long enough for it to stink up the house like the In Your House show. So the fact that it only went 7 minutes was a good thing.
Show continues.
Less, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, there was a commercial break. I was being generous. I think I added a minute there because it was taped.
That's good.
So Doc Hendricks' shitty band is back again this week, but Doc is somehow also in the Slam Jam room as Vince pretends like Doc is jumping from one place to the other here because Slam Jam's just hanging out backstage. I guess it's on wheels. Doc announces the cage match is official for In Your House. It's Bret versus Diesel inside the cage. We get a promo from the Hitman who points out that he's never lost a cage match, calls Diesel a big dummy. Reminded me of Fred Sanford in my youth on watching Sanford and Son, you big dummy. Only, I think Red Fox said it a little better here. Bret saying it sounded a little corny. He called Diesel, you big dummy, you lousy hyena. And Bret Hart points out he's never lost a cage match, Steve. That feels like something Bret would point out here in 2021, because sometimes I wonder if Bret really knows the difference between a work and a shoot. I just feel like that's something Bret's just walking around, I never lost a cage match.
He probably did too. Those 6-man tag cage matches that they used to have on the house shows. Right. I'm sure he was involved in a couple of those with Macho and Tito, right? And I think he's in those. So unless they won those,
I don't remember. I couldn't tell you.
You know what though? Like, I don't doubt anything Bret Hart says as far as his career goes, because I love it when people say they're like the biggest Bret Hart fan, and I'm a big fan. I love Bret Hart. I grew up with him, but there's no bigger fan of Bret Hart than Bret Hart.
That's
So
right.
I'm sorry, guys. The game's already over. Bret Hart is the biggest fan of Bret Hart. So I'm sure he has a list of every single one of his matches that he's ever been a part of, and he knows for a fact if he's lost or won a cage match. I wouldn't put it past him if it's true.
We also learned that Shawn Michaels did accept the challenge last week. Shawn Michaels will put his WrestleMania title shot up against Owen Hart at the In Your House pay-per-view, and Razor Ramon will wrestle the 1-2-3 Kid at In Your House in a crybaby match where the loser will have to be hand-fed a bottle. That should be fun. Meanwhile, we see clips from WWF superstars. Triple H looking for revenge from the Royal Rumble match, the free-for-all from the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, attacks Duke Droese on Superstars, knocks him out, and cuts his hair. And I remember when we were watching that show, I said something about a mini feud and them wrestling again. You said you didn't remember any of that. So was this new to you, Triple H cutting Duke Droese's hair off?
It's one of those things that I knew happened. I just forgot about it. It just out of sight, out of mind type deal. As soon as I saw the clip, I was like, oh yeah, that did happen. Nah, it wasn't new to me at all. It's just one of those things you forget. It doesn't have the impact of Vader and Gorilla.
No, definitely not. You forget for good reason. For very good reason. Doc Hendricks even references Eric Bischoff, but doesn't call him by name, calls him a TBS official. He said that the TBS official called the Titan Towers, which I actually mentioned in the last episode of Monday Warfare, and thanked them for the Billionaire Ted sketches, giving them credit for giving Nitro the higher ratings. And just a week later, now they're threatening to sue for the very same segments. Doc says, you asked for it, so you got it. And it's the latest on Billionaire Ted, and I had to wonder if they really had these press conferences initially planned, or if this was done specifically because of Eric Bischoff's smarmy phone call, as we get the Billionaire Ted press conference for the big match coming up at WrestleMania between the Huckster and the Nacho Man. Billionaire Ted said he is not a hillbilly with cheap suits. He's not trying to put the WWF out of business. Nitro was done to hurt the WWF. Says all of the people asking the questions, all of the press, believe that Ted Turner could have avoided having Nitro go head-to-head with Raw because Turner owns the channels that Nitro and the Saturday Night Show even, they air on. But Turner won't have it. He doesn't care. They try to sell the fact that Turner doesn't care about the fans, which you don't think Vince really cares deeply about the fans. But here Turner's made to be the bad guy, not Eric Bischoff. It's Ted Turner they're feuding with, that he could have put Nitro on a different time, a different day, so the fans could enjoy both shows. But instead he put it up against Raw to make them fight against one another. Ted Turner doesn't care about the fans. And then we talk about who will win the Nacho Man and Huckster match at WrestleMania. It's in Huckster's contract that he never loses, brother. And then I thought this was kind of funny. They mock fight. Savage and Hogan kind of get into it. The fake Savage and Hogan get into it. He even ripped Hogan. The Huckster rips his shirt off. The main line here is, what wouldn't Ted Turner do to put the WWF out of business? I thought it was funny. They took the jab about Hulk Hogan's contract and he's not allowed to lose. It also gives away the fact that wrestling's fake, but it's for comedic purposes. Not one of the worst sketches, but they moved away from the War Room so they've kind of lost their edge with me. But it was there. It was okay.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. I like the way Doc presented it. It's almost as if it does make you wonder if the War Room was supposed to be it, and then Bischoff got a little cocky and did that phone call. They even showed the paper signed by Eric Bischoff talking about how they're contemplating litigation if they don't stop, which is very cool. Very different, very unique. And then, like you said, Doc said, you wanted more, now you got it. And it's almost as like, this is for you, Bischoff, without really saying it. So in that aspect, it's great. The press conference itself is not as funny as the other ones, but they're just really hammering home the fact that the WWF is the underdog, the small business with not as much funds as the WCW and Turner. And they're just trying to sway public opinion to their side. It's always easier to be the underdog than the big giant at the top of the mountain.
The show
Job well done there, I guess.
I guess it was all right. It wasn't too bad this week.
See what happens.
I know there's some stinkers coming eventually, though.
Oh, yeah.
The Body Donnas to the ring as Vince McMahon proclaims Sonny to be the provocative Sonny. So they're really starting to sell Sonny as, well, sex sells, and that's basically the way they're selling Sonny at this point as well. It only took Vince damn near a year to figure that out. As the Body Donnas are in the ring to take on a brand new tag team, Steve. And Hillbilly Jim making his way out. No, he's not wrestling, thank God. But he is the manager of this brand new tag team. Henry Godwinn out first, and who's his partner? They motion to the back, and out walks Phineas Godwinn. It's the debut of Phineas Godwinn here, and Jim gives Phineas his good luck charm horseshoe that Hillbilly used to wear to the ring. Zip had just debuted a few weeks earlier, and they're already wrestling. They're already with another debut here. Phineas, they're taking characters they already have and just adding to them. And they don't stop here. They do it with Marty Jannetty as well. Sonny flirts with Hillbilly Jim early on, so he comes after her with the slop bucket because Hillbilly probably doesn't know how to respond to a woman such as Sonny. Vince McMahon says, Hillbilly ain't no fool. As the Bonnie Donnas work over Hank, but Skip misses the rocket launcher and a hot tag to old Phineas I. Godwinn. That's P-I-G, pig. As Phineas ducks a double clothesline, Henry Godwinn from the outside trips up Zip, and Phineas Godwinn with the slop drop on Skip gets the win in 2 minutes, 17 seconds. Geez, the Body Donnas push, if there ever was one, feels like it's already over as the Godwinns then force Sonny to do-si-do with them. They'd probably go to jail for that nowadays, but, well, maybe not. It was Sonny.
Yeah, I don't know what push you're referring to that is over. But no, this is, I can't really take anything serious in the tag division right now. 96, there's just nothing to it.
I don't know if
it's
you ever
almost
will.
as if they're they're almost throwing slop at the wall and hoping it sticks. To use the Godwinns gimmick there, but maybe he thought the Body Donnas wasn't going to work, so let's try it with this new team with Henry and Phineas, which I don't think it's going to work. Obviously, these teams go at it most of the year, so may not be starting off very good, but it kind of ends okay for most of these teams outside of maybe the Rockers.
Or the Body Donnas.
Well, they get a tag title run, don't they?
Well, I guess if you call that a run, I suppose. They also get cloudy for a day or two.
Yay. Whew. Just what we need.
We learn next week on Raw, Bret had promised it, and he's going to come through. It's world champion Bret Hart defending his title in a rematch against The Undertaker. We then see a replay of Vader attacking Gorilla Monsoon from last week. Jim Cornette and Clarence Mason. Remember Clarence Mason, the guy who got Yoko and Owen the titles back after the September in Your House? He's back. A friend of Ernie Ladd who actually recommended him. A real-life lawyer that Ernie Ladd recommended because he's a long time, I guess probably his entire lifetime, wrestling fan. So Clarence Mason was in hog heaven as we continue to play off the Godwinns here. Getting to come back and be part of the WWF here again and actually remain with the WWF here. Clarence Mason responds, it's illegal to suspend Vader because Gorilla Monsoon placed his hands on Vader first. He defended himself, which is not true. You watch Vader, he shoves Gorilla first, but that's the story they're going with here. Mason says he's filed a motion to vacate this illegal act. They will file for criminal and civil lawsuits as well as if this continues. There's an injunction already in place to suspend the decision of the suspension, meaning that there's already an injunction in place. Vader's no longer suspended at this point in time. I have one issue with this. That's not what Vader was suspended for. He wasn't suspended for, Gorilla suspended him before he ever even touched Gorilla. So Mason's overturning the suspension for inappropriate reasons.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. Just a shortcoming, but obviously if you say, well, Vader's suspended for beating up a referee, it's not going to carry the same weight as beating up Gorilla. So I get it in that aspect, but it's also, Clarence Mason did a hell of a job. It's one of those things that's different than now. And now they'll just try to find a good-looking dude to play a lawyer instead of actually going out and getting a lawyer who can do the lingo and talk like a lawyer and make it work. So Clarence Mason was always believable to me. He was annoying as shit, but it was believable. And knowing that he's a real lawyer makes it all the better. I know they're trying to play off the Johnny Cochran, the OJ trial, that sort of stuff with this type of gimmick. is my guess, is why it was happening. He did a pretty good job with his delivery and his words. You hated him because he's a lawyer, and that's what you wanted out of that gimmick.
Yeah,
so job well done.
I think the gimmick name, too, is a play off of real-life lawyer Clarence Thomas, and then kayfabe attorney Perry Mason. So we get Clarence Mason. As we continue on the show, we learn that next week Gorilla will respond to Clarence Mason's threats, and then there's a Get Well Gorilla.
Oh,
you can
haven't seen this in a while, huh?
Yeah, it's like Get Well Matilda. It's almost like they could have just scratched out Matilda and put Gorilla on there, or Get Well Hulk and scratched Hulk out and put Gorilla on. Get Well Gorilla. You can send your wishes to so the WWF can actually rack up their addresses to send out catalogs, because they're hurting for money here at the beginning of 1996, and they want you to buy all the merchandise you possibly can afford. So send your well wishes to Get Well Gorilla. In reality, they're just collecting your address to send you a WWF merchandise catalog, baby. Got all kind of stuff in it. And it's the stuff dreams are made of. Little Coliseum video from WrestleMania 6 there, Steve.
That's right. Yeah, such a shyster gimmick there.
But it works. You know, I just overheard Conrad and Tony Schiavone talking about this on a recent episode of their podcast, and how they did the Rock and Roll Express tour, the Rock and Roll Summer Tour, and how over the Rock and Rolls were selling more tickets than Ric Flair and Dusty at the time. And they had everybody write in and send in these postcards for like six winners, ladies. They got to be on this tour or part of the tour with the Rock and Roll. You can only imagine what happened there. Use your own mind. However, Conrad asked Tony, what happened with the rest of the postcards? Tony said, he was in charge of them. Tony thought they probably threw him away. Talk about missing the boat. What you could have done with all those addresses, and that's why Vince was Vince and Crockett was Crockett.
I bet you people who got catalogs like maybe 5 weeks later didn't even put two and two together.
How'd they get my address? Wow.
Well, this is cool. Vince McMahon WWF sending me a merchandise catalog. I didn't do anything to sign up for this.
They must have really appreciated my Get Well Matilda letter. Or ban the DDT, or whatever the hell, or my vote of confidence for the Honky Tonk Man. What's that?
Did they do one for Boss Man?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
When he got destroyed by nails?
No, I don't think so.
I'm trying to figure out when the last time they did it before this. Was it Hogan?
It's been a while. Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, there was no Get Well Boss Man or Get Well Crush. Twice. Poor Crush got taken out twice. Doink and Yokozuna.
They did the hotline for the should Savage be reinstated. That's right, yeah. So it must have been Hogan.
We'll move on with the show, though. Vince McMahon in the ring. We talked too much about the old stuff. We'll realize how much better it was than here in 1996. Vince McMahon in the ring. He's going to introduce the new interim president of the WWF, handpicked by Gorilla Monsoon. It's none other than Roddy Piper. And Piper wants to know if he's Vince's boss. And, I guess he kind of is. Vince plays it up with a Vince face here. People are scared because Roddy's in charge, says the Piper. Piper says things are so out of control that they had to call him. He was the one who did the coconut angle. He kicked Cyndi Lauper in the butt. He KO'd Mr. T. He chased Dick Clark through Madison Square Garden, took on 10 cops, and didn't even go to jail. Roddy sees a new generation of tough athletes in the back. They're stronger and faster and smarter, but they're confused. And Roddy's going to straighten them out. Piper pulls out a list of rules, to which Vince responds, "When have you ever went by the rules?" And Roddy says, "Good point," and disposes of said rules. And we want to know, what can fans expect? Piper says everybody's going to pay the piper. And Vince is no different. He picks Vince up. You have to wonder if this was shoot and Vince didn't know it was coming. Roddy picks Vince up and airplane spins him before sitting him down kindly on his feet. And then he picks him up again to close this segment. What'd you make of it?
I thought this was very well done. I love the play off of like Vince saying, "When did you ever follow the rules?" And he's like, "You're right," kind of just agreeing with him. I thought it was great. I feel like this was a little bit of a shoot too. The airplane spin. Very few guys in the business can get away with doing something like that to Vince and not have to face any repercussions, and Piper's one of them. I know the Meltz always talks about how WCW always wanted Piper. Whenever Piper would kind of maybe talk to him, Vince would always pay him and come back. Obviously, I think this is the last time for it until after the WCW folds. But
right. Well, imagine
really
the
cool
money he's getting paid by WCW not to jump back to Vince. I can't really blame him.
Yeah, absolutely. This is very well done, though. I know Piper can be all over the place and not make a lot of sense and just kind of ramble on and on, but he sounds good doing it, so people just buy into it. But this one made sense, and it was very good. I love the fact that he also called Vince a sweet kid. That was good.
Yeah, and this was probably, other than when he appears at the end of what WCW pay-per-view. Was that Halloween Havoc? Where he shows up? Which pay? I can't remember.
I guess it's Halloween Havoc 96.
Okay. Right, I knew it was this year. But other than that, which was just a huge shock more than anything, oh my God, Piper's in WCW. It was a huge shock when he comes out at the end of that pay-per-view. But here, this is probably we're going into the last time that I'm actually shocked and actually happy that Roddy Piper's showing back up. And I'm very excited that Roddy Piper's here in WWF here, even though he's not up to snuff technically in the ring anymore. It's still cool to have Roddy Piper back on my TV screen. I was very excited when I saw him come back here. He hadn't worn out his welcome like he eventually does in WCW for me. So very big deal, very cool. And Roddy Piper is back, and we'll see what happens moving forward with the Hot Rod. And we get our first Mankind vignette. And it's clearly Cactus Jack's voice, so you know immediately who this is. There's no mistaking that voice. Even if you've only watched him in WCW, no mistaking that voice. And we only get a close-up of his missing ear for the entire promo. And he closes it with, "Have a nice day." And Lawler says he thinks the guy's name is Mankind. I don't know who gave him that information, but somehow the King has some notes that this guy's name is Mankind. Very interesting. And we don't get a full look at the character yet, but he's on his way, Mick Foley, to the WWF here. We close out the show. One more match. It's HBK Shawn Michaels taking on Yokozuna along with Jim Cornette. Even though Vader and Yokozuna came to blows at the Rumble, Yoko hasn't officially turned babyface yet. Yoko controls the match early. Shawn Michaels winds up sliding through Yoko's legs, hard thing to do, and slaps Yoko on the butt. Fun spot there. Yokozuna takes that epic bump through the ropes to the floor that he's always known for. And Jim Cornette waves for help down the aisle, and out comes Owen Hart. As we head into commercial break, back from break, Yokozuna misses an avalanche in the corner, and Shawn Michaels with a moonsault press off the top rope for a 2 count. Very impressive there to see Yoko take the moonsault bump. Yokozuna reverses an Irish whip, and Shawn flips up over the top rope and out to the floor, while Cornette distracts, and Owen Hart attacks HBK on the outside and back in the ring, and Yoko's probably blown up at this point, so it's nerve hold time as we head back into a second commercial break. And this time back from break, Yokozuna misses the big leg drop, and Shawn Michaels goes up top, but he too misses a top rope splash. Shawn Michaels hulks up his own way, his kip up style hulking up. 2 big flying forearms, and finally Yokozuna takes the bump. Really great spot there. I love when Yoko takes one of those bumps. Really good job selling, at least, by Yokozuna. Yokozuna winds up catching Shawn Michaels on a top rope dive and smashes Shawn back into the corner. Cornette distracts the referee while Yokozuna holds Michaels so that Owen Hart can get in the ring, but Owen winds up nailing a spinning kick to Yokozuna as Shawn Michaels ducks, and Yoko goes down, and Shawn Michaels with the super kick gets the win in about 11 minutes. Shawn Michaels pinning Yokozuna on TV. If this doesn't say the end of Yoko as a heel, I don't know what does. You never saw Yokozuna do a job barely ever, much less on TV. I don't know that had ever happened up until this point.
Yeah, pretty crazy to think about. Yeah, but you knew someone was coming. It was the plan was laid out, I think, last week, and it's just coming to fruition now. So it makes sense. Give Shawn that big win after the Rumble and move on to next week where this is heading.
So earlier in the show, Yokozuna accidentally aided Diesel in beating the Bulldog, and now here Owen Hart accidentally aids Shawn Michaels in beating Yokozuna. So we see Yoko and Owen begin to argue. A little bit of a shoving match here. Former tag team partners as Davey Boy Smith runs to ringside. He gets in between the two, tries to separate the two. They all wind up ganging up, cornering Shawn Michaels in a 3-on-1, but nope. Here comes Diesel to kinda even the odds just a little bit, 3-on-2. And for some reason, even with only 2 baby faces, the heels bolt. They don't want none of Diesel, I suppose, as Diesel and Shawn chase off all 3 of Camp Cornette to the floor. As Yoko now argues with Jim Cornette on the floor, Vince McMahon stops by and he says there's clearly problems in Cornette's camp. And Jim Cornette gets on the microphone quickly and denies the rumors. There's no dissension in Camp Cornette. And Cornette even challenges Diesel and HBK to a tag team match for next week against Yokozuna and the British Bulldog. And that concludes this week's Raw.
Yeah, pretty good, decent finish to the show, and you're ready. You got it built towards the next week, which is what you want. You got to have a reason to tune in the following week. So good job by them.
Segment of the night, Steve. Was it Shawn Michaels pinning Yokozuna? Was it Bulldog versus Diesel? Or was it the debut of Phineas Godwinn?
I'm going to cheat on this one if that's okay.
Sure.
But it just feels like it all goes together. So the match is between Diesel and Bulldog and then Shawn and Yoko. I thought it did a really good job of building up to that tag match for the next week because you really can't have one without the other because both of them had the sloppy finishes by the heels. So it just built towards that next week's show. I thought it was really well done, and I'm ready to watch the match for next week. And I was like, that's how these shows should be handled and then progress towards your pay-per-views. And Raw, to me, is doing a better job of that so far. They're not only focused on a week-to-week show that makes sense, they're focused on long-term as well as building those pay-per-view matches and things like that. Whereas Nitro, like we've talked about, is just a cluster. It's all over the place.
Yeah, I think segment for me was probably Shawn versus Yoko. Again, not anything special by the way of a match, but I'm really just having to pick from a box of adequate matches, to be honest with you, here this week at best. I remember watching this when it happened and being surprised seeing Yokozuna take a pin. And I was excited too because I was a Shawn Michaels fan at the time, so seeing him pin Yokozuna, it was a big deal both ways. So I guess that's what really stuck out to me way back in '96. So sticks out to me still here today. Just Shawn Michaels pinning Yokozuna is the big deal here for me, even though it's playing a part of a bigger storyline here with Yoko turning babyface. So segment of the night for me, I guess, was the main event. And the ratings are in, and this week saw WCW win the Monday Night Battle with a 2.8 rating and a 4.0 share for the Flair and Hogan match to the WWF Raw's 2.4 rating and 3.5 share. Despite having 2 big matches, Diesel and Davey Boy and Shawn versus Yoko, it was also Shawn's first TV match since he went down to Owen Hart back in the collapse angle. So that's another big deal here. And it's against Yokozuna even, and still Hogan versus Flair gets it done this week. I don't know how much of that is Hogan versus Flair and how much of that is just pure luck that's where everybody was switching to on said week. That's what it feels like at this point anyway.
Yeah. Was it 3.5 or 3.3?
I got a 3.3 share. I don't know. I got a 3.3 share here. It's copy and paste from the Observer, so that's what I'm going with.
Oh, you said 3.5. I just wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay.
No, you're good. So, the real winner to me, I'll just get right into it, is Raw. I thought it did a nice job getting ready for the next week's show, as well as keeping their focus on the upcoming pay-per-view in your house. It made the most sense. And it was really great to see Piper back in the ring, doing what he did to Vince. Like I said, very few people can get away with that stuff, and Piper's one of them. Nitro is just a cluster. It's the Hogan show, and there's really no continuity week to week. It's just big matches being thrown together to pop a rating with no meaning behind them. Like, I want to see Flair and Hogan, but I want a reason to want to watch it, not just, okay, it's Hogan and Flair. I don't need a story. That's garbage. That's lazy. And that's what Nitro seems to be these days.
Yeah, I mean, I go Raw just because everything makes more sense. They're actually leading somewhere. I don't know that either show really had anything spectacular on it. I know back in 1996, I was excited that Shawn Michaels pinned Yokozuna. I was excited Roddy Piper was on the show. It just makes more sense that it's the bigger deal. It's the bigger show as they continue to both bring in new stars, or old stars, if you will, on both shows at this point. It was a big deal, and it's still a big deal here. I'm not really getting all those butterflies in my stomach when I'm watching it this time, but still easily Raw was the better show this week for me as well. So even though WCW wins in the real ratings here on Monday Warfare, I guess it's Raw taking home the win this week. And that wraps it up, Steve. Another 2 weeks of Raw and Nitro in the books as we head into February here. And Super Brawl and In Your House and that road to WrestleMania thing.
Yeah, that little WrestleMania thing. I know you're looking forward to that. Yeah, it's exciting times. Like I said, WrestleMania season is always entertaining for the most part. It has its twists and turns, but it's something special in the air, like I mentioned at the start of this show. And I think they're doing a really good job of getting it started here. The Rumble's just finished, and there's a lot going on in WWF right now that's really positive as far as the future holds. It's just getting there. Whereas, like I said, Nitro, it's all over the place. But
yeah, Nitro
it has its moments too.
Yeah, Nitro, they get it right every once in a while. That old, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. A broken clock is right twice a day. That's how I take Nitro right now. But it's really been heavily the Hogan show, and I can't wait for that to be over and done with. As you pointed out, it's still a ways off. We got to get through February and most of March, but I promise there's going to be a period where there's no Hulk Hogan, and hopefully it's glorious. I can't wait to see how they fill an entire hour of TV without Hulk Hogan taking up at least 3 segments every week.
It's just going to be Macho Man and all his women problems. So that's probably a little bit more entertaining.
Well, pretty much anything's more entertaining at this point than at least babyface Hulk Hogan here at the beginning of 96. Yeah, but another show in the books. We'll be back with episode 12 and 2 more weeks of Nitro, and I think 2 more weeks of Raw, right? We haven't gotten to the dog show yet. So, yeah, I think next episode...
Yeah. Next week is 2-5 and 2-12, so no Raw the second week.
Oh, okay, it's 2-12 that there's no... I thought there was... Okay, you're right.
I was confused on my files, but yes, no Raw on 2-12. For some reason, I thought there was one on 2-13, but I guess not.
I stand corrected. 2 more weeks of Nitro, 1 more week of Raw. Raw, as Vince used to say, will be gone to the dogs on February 12th. The Westminster Dog Show will, yeah, I know. Westminster Dog Show will replace Raw for that week, but it'll return the following week. Don't you guys worry.
Raw.
So we'll be back with 3 more episodes of TV in the Monday Night War next time, Steve.
Raw gets bumped for the Dog Show. Just think about that on your way out. Just think about that.
Yeah, USA was making some good money on that Dog Show way back when.
It's crazy to think about, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When did they stop getting bumped? When did they stop getting bumped? I don't know if they ever did. I mean, I know they did, but...
Well, they continue to get bumped just based on contract obligations. But they once we hit that Attitude Era, when Raw was making big money, USA allowed them to move around and Thursday, Raw Thursday, or Friday, or Saturday, whatever the hell they needed to do. They kept Raw going, and it was basically that way from that point forward.
I didn't know if it was 98 or 99. I can't remember.
I have no idea.
But
we'll figure it out when we get there.
I don't know either. We'll find out. Yeah, we will.
All right, guys. Thanks for another one, Steve. Thank you for being here. And this is Ray Russell. We'll be back again very, very soon with another Monday Warfare, The Battles Within.